Hi, Zizaran here, and today I am privileged to be joined by Neon, or Mark Roberts, game director of Path of Exile 1, and we're going to talk about a lot of different stuff, including Necropolis League. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Yeah, no problem. It's good to be here. It's actually my first one-on-one interview outside of ExileCon ever in my 11 years, coming on 12 years here, so...
Primera vez que haces una entrevista uno a uno.
To this for sure, but
and we've been seeing more and more of you lately. Do you want to give yourself a little bit of an introduction of what you currently do at Chronogear Games?
Mark es el dios, por cierto.
Sure. So I am the game director. What does that mean? Or one of the game directors. What does that actually mean? Ultimately, I decide what happens. I yes or no things on a grander detail. A lot of the nitty gritty can get, I trust to other people. At that point, if I wasn't doing that, I would be completely drowning all the time.
Al final él decide qué pasa y qué no pasa en Path of Exile 1.
Most of that, and obviously there's a bit of a thing of the highest and lowest points of game development are both a form of QA. Ultimately, I am the one that has to say whether or not something is good enough to be presented to people. So yeah, ultimately I kind of I walk around saying yes or no a lot of the time and discussing a lot of philosophy and whether or not we should do things. But it's very moment to moment, computer to computer.
Su trabajo principal es decidir qué cosas van y qué cosas no van a nivel de filosofía a alto nivel.
Seeing their work, kneeling down next to them, kind of seeing what's going on, talking to them, making sure everyone's on the right track. Stopping things that are on the wrong track, all of that kind of stuff.
Shut up,
so, very hands-on, very active, and very enjoyable.
Awesome. And you still get time to play the game a lot yourself as well, right?
I do. Less than I would like, but that's ultimately, you do things like eventually you buy a house and now you have to spend X% of your life dealing with that, and then you get a cat, or I've got a cat, and all of a sudden a small sliver of cats are not high maintenance. But anyway, you end up losing a bit of your time to all of that, and but I say mostly my predicament is that I get stuck in this
Se juega Path of Exile, obviamente.
Is it more enjoyable to play the game or work on the game? And often working on the game is more enjoyable, but playing the game is often obviously still very enjoyable. But sometimes working on the new thing can be a little bit more of an allure for me, especially if it's a fun problem to try and solve.
Dice que para Zizaran, para Neon, dice que es más interesante a veces trabajar en el juego que jugar el juego. Dice que es un poco más llamativo para él.
Playing, and sometimes I am playing a little bit more than I'm working, obviously still doing.
Pero dice que básicamente su vida es Path of Exile, porque trabaja en Path of Exile y después juega Path of Exile.
For game devs to play their own game a lot as well. I feel like you always see and notice that when people play their own game, and I think we have that here, and especially with the way you were talking about things. You were like, this is good, this is bad, let's change it. And that's very refreshing, at least to me as somebody that does play the game a lot. That's awesome.
There's certainly details. I used to remember every single name of every single unique, their stats, their min ranges, max ranges, you could tell me every notable on the tree and I'd tell you exactly what it was. That, I don't know if it's the whole getting into 30s and short-term memory loss, or if it's probably, or if it's just simply that I'm more focused on the broader scale and less on the details.
Ahora, antes podía recordarte exactamente los niveles mínimos y máximos de cada item, lo que se llama todos los ítems, etcétera, porque cada vez le cuesta un poquito más.
And then I'm like, yep, this is good. And then they'll go into it, they'll get a name, but I never know what that name is. And then someone's talking about it later. And unless I've specifically seen it on live, or I've approved a post to go to, like a teaser or something like that, someone will say a name and I'm like, I don't know what that is. So yeah, there's details that got lost.
Él conoce prácticamente todo, pero a veces los nombres cambian cuando los artistas deciden, sabes qué nombre va a ser.
I certainly knew more of the finer details, but I certainly know a lot more now in terms of, bigger picture, and actually how to design grander systems and put them together and all of that. But I still do play as much as I can. But yeah, then yes, as I said before, the short-term memory loss in the 30s certainly starts to play a role. So everyone can look forward to that one. I'm pretty sure that's a universal problem.
It is. Getting past 30 was hard. I'm 35 now. I feel old. I figured we.
It's fine. Let's move on. We're gonna
yeah, I don't want to talk about age. I wanna talk about our first topic, which is teasers. Which you reached out and you were like, "Hey, I don't know if you would mind, but like we could show off lots of cool things that are coming." And I was like, "Yeah."
Dice que si no te molesta podemos mostrar un montón de cosas cool.
Obviously, we'll post all this to everyone afterwards. I don't want it to be that if you're not here, you fully miss out, of course. So that's fine, but I figured we can go through them and discuss some of them. So, yeah, I mean, start us off with whatever you want, really.
Dice que tiene un montón de teasers que quiere mostrar ahorita y que después va a postear para todo el mundo, por supuesto, pero... teasers, cosas nuevas, a ver. Let's see. Bestiary Scarab of the Shadow Crow.
There we go.
Area contains the Black Morrigan.
Shadow Crow. Area contains the Black Morrigan if it contains Einar.
Well, what does that mean, I wonder? The Black Morrigan was the beast, the monster. There's like a crow monster boss from
the Affliction.
But this one's a little bit mysterious. I won't give away too much, but it's just kind of some of the... There's obviously a new beast to capture, and I guess the implication is that that beast can be used in some recipes that you may or may not know about.
Dice que esta es una nueva bestia y que puede ser una nueva receta.
No, it is not that which was taken. But
puede significar that which was taken. No.
So I do have a little bit of that. Obviously, was very powerful. No doubt about it. In the context of charms not really existing, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because now it just feels like we don't want our uniques to feel like rare items and that they get a random set of modifiers. And in the context where you have charms, you can have the unique and the unique has a random set of those things modifiers. It makes a bit more sense. Now, I know there are modular unique items and jewels in particular, so like Watcher's Eye, but at least it's like it has some of the fixed mods and, you know, like there are some kind of half exceptions. But that being said, what I do want to try and do in the future is, because Ritual doesn't really have a meta end game, is try and work the King of the Mists into that. Change it so that some of the Affliction monsters are part of Ritual, and then have it that a more end game objective is to actually, you know, get to that boss and kill that boss. And then you might see some return of some of these items, including that.
Como el end game de Ritual que sea King of the Mist.
The hope is that
y dice que ahí pudiera
we may even find a way to integrate charms some other way, not necessarily into like a socket on an Ascendancy class or anything like that.
Y puede que de alguna forma vuelvan los charms.
My hope is to reintegrate that, and it will give Ritual... I know we added Omens this league to Ritual, but
pero dice que la tal which was taken no estaba porque...
a bit more of an in-game thing and a bit more of a like meta objective.
No tiene sentido porque los charms no existen, entonces va a ser como si fuese un ítem raro con mods randomizados y eso no le gusta.
So sort of potentially something similar to Ultimatum, where there's a chance that it opens up to the boss with King of the Mist.
Yeah, or it could be that, like, you know, we adapt the ritual splinters to something where you're accumulating pieces that you put together and then eventually go and find him or something like that. I'm not exactly
dice
too
que
sure.
Dice que es como Ultimatum, como cuando eventualmente te consigues al boss y dice, sí, puede ser eso, fragmentos para conseguir entrar al boss o algo, y dice que no sabemos, es algo a futuro.
And add a little bit more to it and just make it more fun and a bit more.
Pero dice que le gustaría traer de vuelta la pelea.
That sounds super cool. All right, should we look at the next scarab?
Está genial.
Sure.
We have a lot of scarabs. That's
muchos scarabs.
Yeah, so the next one that I see is Scarab Beyond 5. Beyond Scarab of the Invasion. Need to resize it a little bit here.
I've got the I got the same images here, and I got on my keyboard, so I'm going through them. So hopefully, if we have the same order, otherwise we'll be dealing with a little bit of stream delay.
Unique monsters slain in the area create 8 to 12 additional Beyond portals. Nice.
De 8 a 12 Beyond
so I guess
portals.
This one is really like I could see stacking Rogue Exiles, stuff like that to help promote getting maximum amount of
un montón de Rogue Exiles y un montón de portales.
There are obviously a whole suite of Beyond Scarabs. There are for most of these, but we've picked out just individual ones that I thought were kind of interesting or had interesting interactions with other leagues and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, we don't have to discuss these thoroughly. Some of them are straightforward and just to the nose.
Yeah, this one is pretty straightforward.
One thing you'll notice, and I know this one is limited to 1, but it's something we didn't really talk about, is the scarabs now have a limit. So you can see that below the stack size. So previously,
Eso pasaba muy por debajo de muchos,
scarabs
incluyéndome,
were completely
de
mutually
que hay
exclusive. You could
algunos
not
que tienen un
use
límite,
two of the same
otros que
one.
no.
Now, sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. And it's actually, as we get through some of these, you might see some limited to 2s. Some of them are limited to 4.
Limitados hasta
Obviously,
4
you can't do
algunos.
more than 4.
No puede tener más de 4, obvio.
The current, probably maybe forever cap on our map device slots. But yeah, anyway, we'll keep an eye on that one as
ni
well.
metiendo 8 aceptantes teníamos tantos,
so that
true.
limit does mean how many of them you can put
Yo
in
creo que
with
hay
a
casos
single
en los
map.
que los...
So it
es lo
allows
que estoy
you to
diciendo.
sometimes do a bit more
Si quieres
than you
farmear
could before.
una cosa, yo
Very
creo que
cool.
los nuevos escarabajos son
I'm
mejores.
gonna
Si
open
quieres
the
tener el
Scarab
valor que
Breach
tenías
New
antes,
one.
en total va a ser peor.
Area contains 2
Porque antes
additional
tenías que sí,
breaches. Awesome.
80% de esto, 40% de esto y 30% de esto. Y es como que te das cuenta como eso no llega al 100%. Bueno, porque antes tenías más cosas. Ahora es como que tienes 120% de una sola cosa.
So this one will drop the most common out of all of the breach scarabs, and because it is just the enabling.
2 brechas, límite de 4.
So you might often have a lot more of these than the other types. And you can, if you get excess of ones you don't want to run, you can use the 3-to-1 recipe with the vendor to get a random output. The harvest conversion, which was posted the other day, I believe, is gone. And the reason we did that, I would just clarify that, is that like we wanted it to be that we could drop more. And we found that with that in place, it was people were feeling obliged to effectively have to spec into some level of harvest so that they could always re-roll them. So ultimately, internally, we were like, let's just get rid of that. We can still do the 3-to-1, but that way it's at least costly, and we will just drop more of them. Like they are quite plentiful. I think people might actually
el reroll de escarabajos de Harvest no existe ya. Decidieron hacerlo porque entonces todo el mundo va a querer tener un poquito de Harvest, y en lugar de eso tenemos el 3-a-1. Das 3 escarabajos y te dan 1 al azar. Pero Harvest ya no puede rolear escarabajos.
On alpha for I think a good month. Which is very not normal. That might not seem like a long time to most people in other games, but normally there's like if you're lucky, you'll get 2 weeks of alpha testing, just because things aren't ready enough. So we specifically got ahead of this feature because I was like, okay, if we ruin endgame juicing, like the game's probably dead. So let's not do that. So if we're going to do something this risky, we need to be damn certain it's going to be good. And so I feel like we've taken every measure possible to try and confirm that. So,
tomaron todas las medidas posibles para no arruinar el endgame juicing de Path of Exile, porque si hacen eso arruinan el juego. Así que tuvieron 2 semanas de testeo con esto. That's pretty good.
But yeah.
No matar el juego, buen idea.
That's very cool.
Oh, sorry.
No, I think the limit thing is just a very interesting way to make something, because this is sort of the equivalent of like the cheaper scarabs before, but having the limit thing there makes it so much more interesting. So I really like that.
Yeah. So yeah, it might find you have access to these, and thus you can use more of these at once. So if you just want to run 8 breaches every map, and you don't really want to like run your other breach scarabs, you don't have to, maybe because the tree's investing in it. And then when you find a rarer scarab, you might do maybe 2 of these, 1 of those and 1 of something else, and you can, there's heaps of like combinations and mixing and matching that we expect people to do.
Very cool. All right, we'll look at another one. Breach New 2 will always belong to Chayula, limit 1. Nice.
Yeah, so this is one of those examples of a rarer one, and you might want to occasionally use this, especially, well, you're probably going to want to use this when you're also fully investing in everything that's possible with Breach.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is expected that you kind of, like, I would expect people not to use too many of these ones without also being fully invested into the tree.
Yeah.
Obvio, o sea, cuando vas a usar esto, inviertas todo en el árbol, puros escarabajos de
You can either save it for
breach.
later if you do want to like maybe change a tree later, or if you just don't want to run it for that
20
league,
chapulas,
just trade them all away, or 3-to-1 them.
Pero ya lo podías hacer antes,
3-to-1ing higher rarity ones is not going to be something you really want to do. It's more of the things for the lower, the more common ones.
Yeah, so you can 3-to-1 one of the lower ones and get lucky and get one of the best ones.
Si hay chapula, tienen que haber los demás, supongo.
I'm 99% sure of that. I'm just trying to think if I'm pretty sure, yeah, it should be fully random. It's like, obviously, it's still rare, but yes, you can get lucky and get that, yeah.
Let's look at the Breach New 3. Contains a Breach Lord. So that'll be on every breach.
Cada brecha tiene un Breach Lord.
Yes, it will be in every breach. So yes, obviously you run a number of breaches, you then get Chiyola, and if all of them can be Chiyola, you then get a Breach Lord guaranteed in every single one of them, and then obviously again combined with the tree.
Con el chance del árbol caen un montón de entradas para Chapula.
On there of Chiyola type.
Awesome. Moving on to the next one, Breach 4.
Pretty good.
50% more splinters, 50%. Oh, and the class plans also give 50% more splinters, and a limit of 2, so you can get 100% more.
50% more breach splinters de manitos y de los monstruos.
At some point, if your goal is to get XP and more standard drops, it might be worth using another +2 breaches. Whereas if your goal is to get
50% y pueden ser 2 a 100%,
then it could be that this is actually more what you want to do, and you could there's some quantification you're going to have to do to weigh that up again, balancing it with your tree and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it's straightforward.
No está mal,
50% or 100% more breach splinters from the hands and monsters. Yeah, so that's the full breach set of them.
Yeah, here's the last one, Breach Scarab of Snares.
I know there's one more.
5 to 10 additional class plans, and they're guarded by a rare breach monster.
Yeah, wow, so just every time you open them,
de 5 a 10 más manitos y cada uno tiene un monstruo raro.
And that's again per breach. So
that's awesome.
What do you?
Por breach.
Depends how many breaches. You can get a lot of breaches, but I know some of them a % chance.
Es lo que digo, o sea, si te vas a enfocar en una cosa, creo que ahora es mucho mejor.
And for those that Zizaran's open automatically now, so very cool.
Oh yes.
Yeah. También para los MF, un montón de monstruos raros adicionales.
Things like that which seem so obvious, like you just like of course it is just annoying the whole time, and yet nothing really ever triggered in my brain to tell me like this is easily changeable. It was actually we were talking with one of the console producers here, and he was just like, you can't target them in the midst of all that because of the way that console targeting is prioritization.
Class hands con brechas adicionales, con 100% de lo otro, ahí tienes. Tienes tal vez 4 o 5 brechas, cada una de estas tienes de 5 a 10 adicionales manitos, o sea, tal vez tengas como que en promedio 10 manitos, tal vez 15 en las altas. Yo creo que eso va a ser como que sacas que 3 brechas completas o 2 brechas completas en cada mapa.
When you then, even if you're playing at home, and I end up writing down like 30 things when I'm playing, and I'm like, here's all the things I want to talk about or get changed, and then I come in and I normally talk about it, but stuff like that can often just easily get lost and just kind of be at the background for so long. Yeah.
How do you feel about doors?
¿Cómo te sientes acerca de las puertas?
I think clicking them is essential.
Oh no, cliquear puertas es esencial.
There is something certainly not entirely fun about it, but I don't think that doors should automatically open for you. I definitely do not believe in that.
Dice que hay algo que no es divertido de eso.
I don't particularly feel like it's super beneficial to click on doors.
Pero dice que es esencial para cliquear puertas. No, man.
I'd say this one's a little bit, it's going to seem nebulous because at the end of the day, I don't have a good rationale aside from just it should feel realistic. Right. And I think that is I know it's fantasy, but I mean in the sense of physics should feel realistic in that regard. Like there are worlds where I could see, you know, there's a specific magical skill
lo principal que tiene es que tiene que ser realista en el sentido de que la física tiene que ser realista.
I mean, in some cases, yes, some probably could be damageable and thus openable on damage.
Puede que rompas la puerta.
But like, say the big Val stone doors, I don't think that should necessarily be the case. That's also a kind of a lot of work to do that, right? But I like a game that feels as like grounded as possible, and that is a thing where it's like just to be able to. Like, if your character is just like telepathically able to open doors, then why isn't it telepathically able to do a million other things? And I just
si tu personaje puede abrir puertas telepáticamente, pero no puede hacer otro millón de cosas como agarrar items seguramente.
Physics to some degree is important for me.
It could also be that like the Valve just like started like this new door company and expanded their doors to the rest of the world. You know, like automatic doors, $5.99 per door. Buy them here.
Well. Technically, the Val did do it. The Val just only did it in incursion temples and whatever structures those are for some reason. They had the cataclysm before they could expand that technology everywhere else. I don't know.
That's fair. I just had to ask. I feel like I would have gotten lynched if I didn't, but definitely that's something that a lot of people in the community do on automatic doors. At least in more places.
It's certainly in that category of thing of just like automate everything, click yes on everything. And I understand how people get there, but I think that is one where I would not cross that line. There are many other things I would rather improve than that. And I'll quickly, like, okay,
Coño, no se comportan, chat.
it's somewhat adjacent, but it's to do with clicking on things. I don't know if you noticed in that PoE 2 build that you played. I don't know if anyone really noticed, but did you or anyone mention the item pickup range?
Yeah, it's longer, very very noticeable longer, but I did not mention it in my video.
So the moment
en Path of Exile 2 el rango para agarrar items es más grande, más largo.
That is something I would like to move over, so at least it's like less. I have to walk 3 centimeters. Now I want to make sure we get it perfectly right before we do that, because that is the kind of thing where once you put it in, it cannot go lower. It can go higher, but it cannot go lower. So we want to get that perfectly right in PoE 2, and then I would be pretty keen to move that over. It does require a little bit of, like, it's not just item pickup, it's NPC interaction. Like, you don't need to be, speaking of the physics and the reality, you don't need to be 3 centimeters in real world space away from an NPC's face to be talking to them. You can perfectly do it from like 2 meters away. So there's things like that as well where I'd like it to just improve interaction.
Dice que una vez que sepan exactamente cuál va a ser el rango para agarrar items en Path of Exile 2, eso es algo que va a querer traer para Path of Exile 1.
Same kind of treatment, so at least you wouldn't have to be like actually touching them. But I can't say exactly what that should be. Like what we're doing in the PoE 2 is going through object to object to object and like customizing exactly what we want that range to be, that it kind of feels appropriate yet also feels okay to use on WASD. So even though PoE 1 won't have WASD in that regard, at least something like the interaction distances.
Path of Exile 1 va a tener WSD alguna vez?
Well, there's a lot needed for that.
¿Necesitamos mucho para eso?
I'm just going down the giant
It's just really interesting because I hated the idea of WSD, but after trying it, it was very good.
Zizaran dijo que odiaba el WSD, pero después de probarlo dijo que se convirtió.
Okay, what's actually needed for that is we need the new character rig. Just thinking about this. In order to get the new character rig, you'd have to have all the new animations, which seems like a win, except not all PoE 1 skills will have animations on that new rig. So you'd have to do a bunch of animating. And in order to get the rig, you'd have to re-rig you'd have to reskin every single armor in the game, all PoE 1 items, and all existing microtransactions.
Dice que para hacer el WSD hay que hacer nuevo rigging
done for PoE 2.
En todos los items, todos los skills, todos los personajes y en todos los MTX para hacer el WSD en Path of Exile 1.
Some amount, probably like a year into PoE 2, we would be like able to have had all the items on PoE 1 rigged onto that rig, and thus it could port over, and thus you'd get all the new animations. Now, whether or not we actually want to do that's a different story, but there is a world, but that would then give us the minimum requirement.
Básicamente lo que están haciendo ahorita es que todo el MTX tiene que estar en el nuevo rig, porque va a ir para Path of Exile 2. Por lo tanto, es como que eso se está haciendo como un año dentro de Path of Exile 2, probablemente va a estar absolutamente todo. Así que eso les da como lo mínimo para empezar a trabajar en eso y pudiera pasar eventualmente.
Shrines in the area are
guarded. What have we got here? Domination, Scarab of Tears? One, yeah.
Shrines en el área están guardados por un boss de mapa.
Yes, it should be.
Modificadores en el final map boss también se aplican a esos guardianes.
It shouldn't just be the same one, but if you never know, it might have been set up that way. So what can you get? 11 shrines?
Can that drop anything? Like
esto es OP para farmear.
Like stuff like that.
I do believe
tengo mucha curiosidad de Blight y de Harbinger.
It might have alt text that verifies that. I think it is meant to drop the Guardian maps and the additional maps and all of that.
Porque, o sea,
I can verify that afterwards, and I can
son bastante creativos,
you can tell people if you want, but I'm pretty sure that was intended.
Very cool.
A Blight le entra perfecto los Wisdom Affliction, Lo hace mucho más difícil, pero también más recompensante.
I consider that to be unclear, and I'm hoping that has a reminder text. Otherwise, we will.
Cool.
I will get that verified. If not,
oh, that would be super nice. Awesome. That was a very cool one. Man, we have so many. We move to Essence 1. This is just Essence Scarab. So that's similar to the Breach one.
Dos esencias adicionales.
We can just move on. Adds 2 essences.
Yeah.
Essence Scarab off
Son de un tier
Ascent.
superior.
Tier higher, limit of 1.
Okay.
So this is, I guess, it used to be on the passive Atlas tree and is now found on an essence instead.
Alright. Uno solo, pero bueno.
Nice. But not a huge amount to discuss
No
there.
está mal.
I'll move on to 3.
Para los essence farmers, como myself,
so
estoy feliz.
we only have 4. Very curious.
I haven't put them all in. So yeah, you can just read out the actual name. So Essence Scarab of Calcification. Yep.
That's it.
Todos los rare monsters. Oh my god! What the fuck?
It doesn't include league content, of course. They can't spawn out of a breach and just be in an
Holy
but all natural inhabitants. Rare
Dice que todos los naturales que están en el mapa, no los que salgan de brechas, por ejemplo.
So wait, how many maps or how many essences are you getting in a juice map now?
Oh my god!
Wow.
Well, you can get 2 per scarab, and then I can't remember how many you're getting from the tree. So I mean, that doesn't matter though. On top of this, you're getting
definitely
what do you got? Like 50 natural packs. I mean, you got about 50 and 40. I mean,
Jesus, como 30 esencias al
so
menos.
you take like a 70,000 effectiveness map, as we like to call it internally, which is one of the better maps.
Esto es mejor que las memorias.
Of monsters, you'll get what is that?
Wow.
70 packs, and you got 14%.
Esto es mejor que las memorias.
I mean, it's what, like you could get maybe 10 without adding extra other packs that might get imprisoned. You will get like an extra 10 essence monoliths, I guess, maybe.
Wow. And to confirm, this doesn't work with any like league content like Legion, Breach, etc., right?
It should not, no, because
no
those
debería.
Kind of technically spawn afterwards. And
dice que
that's so cool.
En teoría no afecta a ningún otro
some interaction that I'm thinking about that I'm not too sure on.
Que no debería interactuar con otro contenido, o sea, cosas de Legion, cosas de etcétera, no deberían funcionar.
Well, I wouldn't say so much beasts, but you never know. But more like, actually, that is the one that might. I would have to double check. But it could also be like, if you add packs through other scarabs, I'm not sure if they like just random packs that you can get, which like what the Sextants used to do. I'm not sure if those will count either. So there's some detail I'll look into there. But,
dice que ya está pensando en cosas que pueden romper un poquito el juego.
If we keep some notes in this, in the like chat on Discord, or to keep a list of the questions, or I can get Nicholas is probably listening. He can do it. I'll give a bunch of answers afterwards as to verify how all of these work.
Zizaran, shut up!
I wish I knew enough, but again, this is that kind of level of detail that I'm not really. I'm like, this is cool, let's do it, and then some little decisions will be made along the way, and then I'm like, you know, you can go either way with that, and to what's like.
Sí, no debería funcionar, pero no lo pensaba. Voy a verificar.
We'll just go ahead, and that will be how it works. But then those things don't necessarily get told back to me on that level of detail. And then I discover them on live, and I'm like, holy shit, this is too broken. What have you guys done? Or I'll be like, yep, sweet, perfect, well done, guys. But yeah.
I am a little bit curious with all of these things being reworked. Is that going to potentially need a balance pass on the memories, like the essence memory and things like
that? Con todos
estos
rebalances que están haciendo, ¿pueden que tengan que cambiar algo en las memorias?
Possibly. I would say I'm not happy with where memory lines are. I think they can be a more...
Él no está muy feliz con las memorias actualmente.
And right now they're very rare, very hidden, and some are broken and some are terrible.
Yeah. Dice que actualmente es como una mecánica un poco escondida.
Cards for 324, but there was just no way we had enough time to do that. So
sienten que es algo que debería ser un poquito más core. Dice que algunas son muy buenas y otras son muy malas. Así que necesita un poquito de amor. Dice que la querían mejorar para esta liga, pero no les dio chance.
You actually right-click and left-click on your atlas, and picking a map is relevant and actually has an impact. Now that sextants are gone, but then again, that's not to say sextants were the right way of doing that. I think we can replace. So I have one other idea there. I'll mega tangent, but hopefully it's all good.
Go ahead.
There's a new scarab that is the divination. I think it was of scrying or something like that. And it's the one where it's like your favored maps drop in a different. the map you're running drops your favored map's
Estoy hablando
divination cards
del
instead.
escarabajo
I can't remember.
que dropea divination card a tus mapas favoritos.
I actually wanted to make a scrying orb that is
¿Quieres hacer una
something
orbe?
where you can right-click on one map, left-click on another map, and it will move the divination cards drops from that map to the new map. And I still want to do this. I actually think that is a very good solution to the whole, like, I want to run the map I want to play instead of having to run the one that is, you know,
dice que quiere hacer una orbe que tú selecciones un mapa y selecciones otro y muevas las cartas que caen en un mapa en el otro mapa. De esa forma tú puedes jugar el mapa que tú quieres, el layout que tú quieras, pero con las recompensas de otro mapa en Divination Cards.
I feel like this would help. So that scarab that kind of does that in a different way.
Dice que el escarabajo hace algo similar a eso, pero dice que no sabes.
The solution to that problem is finding a rare scarab. I want it to be that this is something you can do.
Dice que es algo que él quiere simplemente como que hacer, pero todavía no está seguro cómo hacerlo y quiere ver cómo funciona el escarabajo antes de hacerlo. Pero suena interesante,
just looking at
para mirar Apothecary Extrañas,
really excited with that. I did see some people were saying, won't we only run one map then? But I mean, I'm not against it.
I would argue a lot of people already kind of do that, and yes, maybe. There's kind of some ways around that, but I would argue that is. I mean, okay,
ya había gente quejándose diciendo de que vamos a hacer un solo mapa todo el tiempo y es como que eso no es lo que hacemos ya, por favor.
And I don't know if the answer is yes, and I don't know if the answer is no. You obviously always get the meta and the majority doing a thing, but is that, I guess, how much different is it from what's happening right now? And it may be quite different. Maybe it maybe isn't. I feel like before we added that, there was still a decent chunk of you run different maps. I mean, yes, there was obviously the whole, like, everyone runs Gorge and everyone runs Strand and everyone runs...
Gorge,
but we also had the capacity to, like, we can rebalance maps. Like,
Gorge.
We can change map layouts. We can change densities of monsters and maps. There are plenty of levers we can up and down, and we haven't really been doing that, honestly, for quite some time, because ultimately what governs what maps are run is either it's the most efficient for boss running, or it's got highly efficient, like the highest value or set of values for divination card acquisition.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Another thing as well that I was thinking of is, like, for example, I always run Blight Scarabs in Carcass and things like that, so you get more Blight rewards. So it's generally just like, when you have a reason to do a different map.
For sure. I actually like the I like the difference between, say, like, you know...
Están hablando acerca de los mapas de si vale la pena hacer mapas distintos o algo así. Y dice como que, o sea, realmente hay dos razones para hacer mapas. O es el mapa más eficiente para farmear bosses, o es el que tiene el mejor set de recompensas para Divination Cards.
When someone does choose to kind of do the 10-way maps and you're kind of just running whatever maps you want, I actually do think that can be quite a fun playstyle. But you have to be not economically driven to really convince yourself to do that right now, which there are players who do that, and that is fun. But yeah, I want to make it that the economically driven decisions there play less of an impact, I guess. Which is just a matter of balance, and the balance not being correct. So
yeah, I feel like a little bit of it is also that you have to choose between, like, Maven or Eater or Exarch influence. Like, if I could Maven and Eater influence, that would maybe be less of a problem.
True. Well, hopefully, at least now, you can have one tree that does one and another that does another, and at least you can choose which one you're going to do and change between them on a daily or hourly or whatever you want basis, and that is so much better for me, and
Están hablando justamente de que ahora, como tienes distintos árboles, puedes tener un mapa para...
This is
Harbinger, right?
Scarab of Discernment. Drop
rare currencies
shard and drop a single type, so it picks one and only drops that.
Solo dropea un tipo de currency shard.
If you happen to get the fractured shard, I guess is the best outcome that can happen there, and you know, you might it'll have the same kind of impact as finding, like, the divine altar from Eater or something, of just like, come on, hopefully it happens, and then when it happens, you make big money.
Mira,
wait, we still have Mirror Shard, right?
It is still on there. Is it still on there? I mean, we haven't changed it in this patch, so if it is still on there, then it is still on there. I just don't remember exactly You'd have this thing. I have this thing all the time where I'm like, I could say with certainty one way or another until someone asks me the question, and then I'm like, oh no, now I'm doubting myself.
Yeah, I get that.
Básicamente la idea de esto es que dice que es como la cosa del altar de Divines. O sea, cuando elija eso, va a salir un montón de currency. Si elige, sabes, el de Fracture o el de Mirrors.
They're duplicated.
Currency shards dropeados por Harbingers son duplicados.
Literally multiplicative with the one from before.
Multiplicador con el anterior.
Say about that. So now when you get the good thing, you get twice of the good thing.
Copium farm.
Very, very cool. Now, are you a little bit worried that there will be like set ways, like that people feel like they kind of need everything before they're using anything instead of using like, oh, I'm just going to throw some in white maps or yellow maps?
Okay, so because the scarabs are done by rarity, so there's kind of like common ones and uncommon ones and rare ones, kind of. It's not exactly like that, but you know that's ultimately kind of how it works.
Yeah.
The intention is that like, if you get the rarest one, you're going to want to use it with the set and probably with the tree, of course. But at least with the more the kind of bottom or top two or three, lowest 2 or 3 rarities. Highest, whatever. The ones that are most common, you should have the freedom to kind of use those whenever you want and not have to always feel like you're using them with a set, because otherwise you're just going to have too many of them anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully it's not going to feel so restrictive that you have to get all of them in order to use them.
Dice que la idea es que no sean tan raros para que no te sientas como que, para usar este escarabajo tengo que, juro, poner los otros escarabajos perfectos para poder usarlo. Dice que deberían ser relativamente comunes.
We have a harvest scarab. Maybe we should skip those?
Harvest Scarab. Life Force dropeada de Harvest Monsters está duplicada, los monstruos tienen el doble de vida.
It's duplicated at 100% more life. Nice. That's similar to the Sextant before.
Como el Sextant, exacto.
Yeah, I think I included some of these just because I wanted people to see that, you know, like we have included some of the Sextant things. It's not just I saw a lot of people going like, oh, this is gone and that's gone and that's going to go on.
Ahora contains sacred groups. It will be obtained up to one additional tier.
Some examples of some of these. But again, we're going to post the full set, so
each type if
people
possible.
Can see that for themselves afterwards perfectly just fine.
Si el área contiene un sacred grove,
I'm now showing the cornucopia one. If an area contains the sacred grove, it'll contain up to 1 additional tier 4 seed of each type if possible. Wow.
Si el área contiene sacred grove, va a contener hasta un tier adicional, digo, una semilla adicional de tier 4 de cada tipo, si es posible.
Wow. That's awesome. I mean, one of my favorite things is synthesizing items with Harvest, so
esto es cool. Si no sale de Sacred Grove, no hace nada de escarabajo.
Incursion. We only have one from Incursion, and this is Timelines.
Incursion. Último arquitecto. En el área va a dropear un templo itemizado.
Dropping an itemized temple, and the itemized temple dropped are generated based on the current temple layout, but with randomized room tiers.
Un templo gratis con quién sabe qué.
The temple you're building is relevant, but yeah, the tiers will be randomized.
Muy interesante.
I think we added that bottom thing because it was too good. Say again?
Can this drop dead ends? Like, can we get a bricked temple as a drop and you're like, shit one?
I think it probably can because it's based on the current layout, and I'm assuming, again, this is that detail I don't exactly 100% know, but I'm assuming the layout is matching what it is. So my assumption is if you're early in the temple and it drops, there's probably a good chance that it will not have all the connections.
Dice que está basado en el templo que estés haciendo, por lo tanto, si tienes un templo que está recién empezando, puede que cuando dropee tenga cuartos que no están conectados, por lo tanto sería un templo roto.
So, I already have a follow-up question. So it says that the tier is randomized. Is it affected by it at all? Like, it's more likely to give a tier 3 corruption chamber if you already have one?
Gracias, más nada.
Or would you be benefiting from, as soon as you see there's a corruption chamber, you start running with this?
I would assume the tiers are straight up just randomized, so it's either 1 or 2 or 3. And
los tiers son randomizados, así que es 1, 2 y 3.
So you're not always going to get good ones, and
sometimes me gusta mucho Incursion,
but at least at the end of the day, you're still getting an additional
aparte de que ten en cuenta algo, si Incursion no es algo que guste mucho, significa que estos escarabajos van a ser baratos, se van a generar simplemente un montón de templos.
Your corruption chambers and your gem chambers, and you know, like.
Absolutely.
I guess you're more likely to now want explosive rooms if the layout thing works.
Coño, el saco hater, deja de hatear tanto.
And you might have dead ends, so at least that will
se queja de todo el saco.
Increase the probability that
nada
when
lo
these
hace
drop,
feliz,
you
man.
can fix the connectivity if it works in actual randomness.
Yeah. That's a really cool
Mark
idea. There's so many like neat and interesting new things here. Next up we have
Octavian actually was the one who kind of designed most of these, fun fact, and put all these together. So
all of them, wow.
Yeah, I mean obviously input from a bunch of others, but you know, he kind of spearheaded it pretty early on.
Octavian fue el que estaba diseñando esto. Creo que la mayoría lo diseñó. Va a tier 14 en un área que tienen un chance de dropear Shaper, Guardian, Elder, Conqueror o Unique Synthesize.
Or Unique Synthesize maps instead. Wow, so you really want to like juice how many maps you're finding.
O sea, cada mapa que sea tier 14 en adelante puede dropear como uno de Guardianes o Síntesis.
And it's probably undergone a number of iterations and balance, so even what it maybe was is
no está mal.
Not what I remember it to. What it is probably not what I remember it to be, but nonetheless,
¿cuánto es el chance? 50-50, man.
The amount of maps dropping.
50% como todo. O sea, ¿pasa o no pasa?
A lot more of. So you might want to run this paired with a number of map scarabs, I guess, combined with a specific
50%. O sea, pasa o no pasa, como todo en la vida.
Capability to get bosses.
Do you know if this is like a 5% chance or an 80% chance, like some sort of ballpark?
Honest, at this point, I have absolutely no idea.
That's fair.
And I don't even know if I'm going to say what it is, because if someone didn't put it on there for a reason, so
sí, hay que no lo puso ahí por una
mistake, it may not. But I have no idea, and we will just see. Hopefully it's enough to feel it working, as opposed to just be like, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't.
Mark.
But you will notice it working, obviously, because if it's very binary, right? Those maps can't drop normally, so if you're getting them or not from the boss, you will notice it working. So hopefully it is impactful. This is one of the rarer. It's on the rarer end of things.
Que puede 3 veces este carajo en 3 mapas distintos y no le cae ni uno.
Like ultra commonly.
50-50. Either it does or it doesn't. We'll move on to the Legion one.
Legion?
So many. I love that we're getting so many. Eternal Conflict. Wow.
Legion monsters can be broken out of ecstasy multiple times.
Crazy.
Wow.
So every time you break them out, they have more life than before.
Cada vez que los sacas, el ecstasy tiene más vida que el anterior.
But like, if you can go ballistic with as much time as possible, like I internally we had a thing where
wow,
they have a maximum. I think it's a diminishing return actually, on the chance of them to respawn with a reward, which is kind of how it works in Domain of Timeless Conflict. Because at one point I remember Octavian was testing it, and he had a monster that had the reward symbols going probably like 6 screens to the right. Like you could run halfway across the map and there would just be reward symbols stretching across the whole map. So yeah, it's a little bit more balanced, but it's still pretty crazy right now.
Dice que inicialmente era que cada vez que los sacas le agrega una recompensa. Entonces que Octavian testeando tenía como 3 pantallas completas de recompensas.
These are great.
Pero eso está genial.
That was the only Legion one. Map 2. Cartography Scarab of Ascension. Or a tier higher up to a maximum of 16. Cool.
Un tier higher. Dicen. Para map sustain está bueno.
Pretty straightforward. Just trying to min.
Más 1 al tier de mapa que cae.
I mean, this would also give you more tier 17s technically as well. Because your 15s will now get converted to 16s. Which would then have a chance to become 17s.
Okay.
That technically works with that.
Busca que tiene currency y le doy. Creo que son randomizadas las recompensas, pero no sabemos.
This is one of the sextant ones that. Yeah, this is one of the sextant ones that people were convinced we were removing, which we are not.
Nice.
You know, I can't remember if this works on 17s or not.
No sabes si eso funciona en mapas tier 17 o no.
You know, I don't know. You could go either way. You could argue modified supersedes corruption, which I think it does, or corruption supersedes unmodifiable, which would seem a bit pointless because then you could, because you can't Valorb them. I would assume that tier 17s do not get affected by this, but it's a bit of an assumption.
Yeah. We have Cartographer's Sheriff of Duplication. Maps of 30% has to be duplicated. And I guess that will pair really nicely. With the,
60% de chance con los mapas caen un tier adicional y algo adicional que le pongas.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly that.
Okay.
For your bosses, really.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
8 mods duplicados, guardianes duplicados.
That was 5. All right. Scarab Miscellaneous 1. Monsters Lineage. Magic pack size 40%. Okay.
40% es una buena cantidad.
So we tried to, aside from having them all just like adjacent to leagues, we also wanted a like
40%
bunch that
no
just
está nada mal.
kind of can intersect with a bunch of different leagues and buff them.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of those. There's one coming up a bit later that you want to remember this one. So remember magic pack size, and you'll see one of the ones coming up.
Claro, será así. O sea, está muy fuerte esto.
Okay. But obviously this holds its own regardless. So
o sea,
yes, it's pretty.
El mod en los mapas es 20%, me parece.
Scarab Magic pack Adversaries. 4 additional packs with mirrored monsters. And this does not make you immune to reflect.
So what I'm pretty sure these will also be imprisoned in essences, by the way, just thinking about that earlier one. I think this is an example of it probably will work.
Estos probablemente van a estar aprisionados en las esencias también.
So, there's a way.
Si lo haces con el otro escarabajo. 4 packs con mirrors rare monsters.
No, it does not. I mean, it would say it if it does, so no, it does not.
I'm gonna miss that section.
Este como el sexta cantidad de inmunidad, pero ya no tiene inmunidad.
Well, as I've said recently, deal with it is kind of my response to that one.
I will.
What you can do.
I'll try my best. Scarab Miscellaneous 5. Scarab of Stability. Oh. Does this mean you can have more than 6 people in your map?
No, there is still a limit on the number of people within a map, and that is capped at 6. But
what the fuck is this?
I guess, you know, like you'd run your tier 17, you don't want to really risk it. This is what you run with it, really. I mean, you can run it on others as well, but I wouldn't expect to have this one on hand all the time.
O sea,
but yeah, so hopefully.
La idea de esto es que, a veces mueres y no se gasta el portal.
If you're thinking like, no, I don't know if I'm going to be able to kill this, you can use this with.
O sea, esto es para, bueno, saben a veces que Bilal habla de sus mecánicas defensivas, son 6 portales.
Yep. Or just get more loot out, I guess, which.
That's pretty good, dude.
I don't know if that's a problem necessarily that will present itself very frequently.
No. Dicen que el cap siguen siendo 6 personas. Ojo. Siguen siendo el cap de 6 personas. No pueden entrar más de 6 personas en un mapa. Desgraciado.
Rerolling has no cost the first 2 times. And I love rerolling favors 1 additional time.
Rerollear favores en el altar no cuesta nada las 2 primeras veces.
Straightforward. Limited to 2 again. So technically, it could be the first 4 rerolls.
Nice.
And
eso está bien.
2 additional times technically as well.
Y puedes rerolear el favor una vez más.
I love the limit thing. Was such a good idea.
Un límite de 2. Por tanto, puede ser 4 rerolls gratis.
I agree. It came
y 2
in quite
adicionales.
late in the process, actually.
Área contiene 5 additional strong boxes, límite de 4.
Probably a good 2 weeks of them being in a spot where we were doing first testing before we actually discussed doing that. Yeah, but it was a great addition, and it was kind of so obvious as well. And yet again, we none of us really saw it until quite a bit in. So yeah.
Very cool.
Wow. Si hay algún otro que diga, bro, las cajas dropean todo. No sé, dropean solo escarabajos, dropean algo así. Y pones 15 cajas.
One more. There is another. Is the monstrous treasure equivalent. So yes, you can use them. Technically, you use 3 of the ambush, so plus 15 on top of the containment one.
Área contiene muchas additional strong boxes. Los inhabitantes están en ambush.
I haven't actually checked out the new atlas, but do we still have the special, the like shaping of the skies for the special map crafts there, or are they gone? I actually didn't check.
We kept. I think we removed monstrous treasure from that because it's a scarab now. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Monster treasure,
sure that one is that. I think we still have that node. I could be very wrong here. We had so many discussions about this.
Sí. Este es Monster Treasure, básicamente no hay ningún mob afuera, solamente el boss seguramente, y todo está metido en cajas, eso es todo.
Wow.
Es Monster Treasure de antes, básicamente.
That's very interesting.
This is your Monstrous Treasure one here, effectively,
yeah.
Este es bueno.
A lot of people are asking if we have the 500% quant thing still, but I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Hay gente diciendo que si tenemos el 15% de quantity, Dios mío, ¿por qué preguntan eso, boludo? A la hora te van a nerfear.
I don't remember. You'll get the full list later and we'll find out. I genuinely do not remember, unfortunately. I I don't remember specifically removing it, but like flip of a coin at this point again.
There's a lot of changes.
Like, honestly, it's too much to keep on top of myself. Like, it's just, I mean, it's so much. I still haven't even read the patch notes, by the way.
Ni siquiera he leído las patch notes, dice Mark.
Like there are just things that, like people will, there are still changes in there that I don't even know about, and that's fine, and that's how things have to work. By the way, it's not like one person can know all of this while this is going on, while I'm working on 2 games at the same time, and you know,
dice que es imposible que yo sepa absolutamente again, todo de todo mientras trabajo en 2 juegos a la vez.
Because I want to learn all the things that I don't know, and
¿Cómo está el nivel en esta liga?
Making decisions based on information.
Yo creo que va a ser igual que la liga pasada.
Yeah.
Subir hasta como 200 por ahí y de ahí se va a mantener por un largo tiempo.
Off the fumes,
tiene que ver más con la retención de jugadores más que con lo que se haga en la liga.
Monsters have 500% increased quantity, and sulfide is guarded by monsters from the azurite mine.
There is a target limit. I know there's a limit on this one, so don't get your reverse knockback stuff. You know, like you might want to do it a little bit, but I don't think it's actually necessary. But this one's a bit. You know, you could argue promotes a different kind of play style because obviously the more kind of just screening you're doing, the less useful this one will be. So if you're kind of wanting to engage with this, because it affects it in the radius around it, of course.
Un humo que
it is
en Raging Fumes, un buff que cuando toques la cosa se le aplica ese buff. Tienen 500% más de quantity. Y los Sulfide en tus mapas están guardados por Azurite Mine Monsters.
Certain builds more than others. I think it is where you have so much that is universally good for everyone. It is completely fine to have some things where someone feels like, if I play this, I get to utilize this one better than other players can. I think that is generally a good thing. So this is kind of one of those.
That'll be very interesting to see what Empyrean and crew does with that.
Sí, Empyrean va a romper el juego con esto, man.
True.
Reverse knockback, traen todos los mobs ahí, los tocan ahí, 15% de quantity.
All monsters are at least magic, and then we have the 40% pack size. Wow.
Yes. So this one is more. I'm curious to see what that group does.
Wow.
Yeah.
Todos los monstruos son al menos mágicos y tenemos el 40% más de pack size de los monstruos mágicos.
Maybe.
Holy
Hopefully
dude.
not, but you never know. But yeah, awesome. the next set of these, so these are, as you said, Uber is in the file name.
Esto va a estar muy caro.
You can see from the art, they're
Esto lo
all
usar
a little special
Empyrean,
looking. These are all a little bit more almost meta-like. They don't really have any league association. They're kind of just meant to be about combining with other things to do. And you do not expect to run these all the time. Like you would have to be very, very, very wealthy. You can do it with trade. Anything is possible, really, but like you're not going to be finding a lot of these. They will be rare. They will be expensive.
Dice que no vas a conseguir muchos de estos, van a ser raros, van a ser caros. Pero con trade todo es posible.
So we'll move on to the next one.
Los monstruos raros en el área tienen 2 modificadores adicionales. Haz tu mapa más difícil solo porque sí.
Yeah, so even though this at face value seems like just a downside,
no, pero
the more modifiers they have, the more drops they drop. And the higher the probability they have for like those kind of reward mods, even though we've
obviamente son uber raros a cambio de que capaz dropeen algo bueno.
But they also will drop more and better items.
Y HH, claro, exacto.
Well, I was going to bring it up later. I'm just curious. The gem XP and things like that, was that all very intentional, and what was sort of the reasoning behind some of those?
Well, it was intentional, but you could argue it was unintentional for it to do what it did. So I guess this is the thing where
fue intencional quitar el tema de la experiencia y las gemas y esto porque
you can look at it as a win because it's now my gems are always at the level it needs to be, but often what was happening during the campaign is you just ended up with your mega list of gems down the right hand all in gray and you can't level them up because they're over leveling your character.
Dice que no fue intencional lo que estaba haciendo.
That was certainly not intended. On the other hand,
dijo que no era intencional
you get to end game and it's nice because now it feels like your gems
que tú terminas la campaña y todas tus gemas estén en gris, no puedes subir el nivel.
With where you would want them to be. And I actually agree with that part, but I want to do some changes around here, and I'm not exactly sure what to do. I haven't thought too much into this, but thinking about it now, like, I would want it... Like, okay, imagine a world where... well, okay, maybe people are happy with this or not. I'm just going to put it out there, actually, and I'm curious what you think as well. Should it be that your gems level all the way to level 100 and even beyond that? And, like, let's say... current gem level 20 balance is put to gem level 18, and then we cap gems at say level 25. So like if you keep playing, they keep leveling, and like just as a random thought experiment.
Oh, that's
like,
pretty cool.
Should we explore something like that? Because we've just been stuck. We haven't changed this formula pretty much forever.
Deberíamos tener las gemas 20, que el nivel 20 sea el nivel 18 y realmente las gemas levelean como hasta nivel 25.
Your characters, and I get gear will continue to progress you, but yeah, should your gems continue to level further than they do right now, or should they hit a cap earlier? Like, what are the thoughts there? Like, I genuinely.
My initial thoughts is I don't like the idea. I can see this being really good for somebody that does play a lot and stuff, but it does create like a bit of a weird power imbalance as well.
Sí, se dice que tiene como un imbalance raro de poder.
The way it works right now, you get 21, you get your 21 gem. Like that's like, I think it's already in a very good state. I definitely think it was a good thing. So right now, we were getting level 20 gems somewhere between level 90 if you were very lucky, but at least before 93. So that you could flip your gems and stuff like that reasonably and get them pretty quickly back up. Whereas before, it was sometimes even like level 95. So it was like almost twice as slow.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess it was balanced around. We made so many incremental changes over time that allowed you
to dice que no le agrada, o sea, como que suena cool, pero dice que va a ser como un desbalance raro de poder con algunas gemas y que él siente que ahorita a nivel 93 aproximadamente tenías tus gemas nivel 20 y que eso le pareció un buen estado. A diferencia de antes que era como hasta nivel 95 tenías tus gemas nivel 20 y de 93 a 95 es como el doble de experiencia para que sepas, un montón.
Well, I certainly now have it because I did read a bunch of stuff about that. I do have it on the list for at least 325 to kind of review, reevaluate exactly when do we want a gem to hit level 20, ignoring that whole other feature aside. That's just a thought experiment. Which, but at least the hitting gem level 20, I do want to, and I would say like hitting that around the 90 to 92 mark is probably actually what I would consider to be around right. So
Mark está diciendo de que tú deberías llegar
XP from 250 to 100 or something.
De level 90 a 92, tu gema debería ser nivel 20. Es lo que dice Mark.
Yeah, we'll adjust it.
A mí me parece que eso tiene un buen sentido.
Discuss it with people and see what other people think, and there might be something else. But I agree that if your gems are hitting 20 at like 95, I'd say that's too late. Because I agree.
Mark está diciendo de que van a bufear a las gemas en el sentido de que vas a llegar más rápido a nivel 20.
Often level many gems to 20, and you're just doing that over and over to get for corruption outcomes and whatnot. It's not like you don't have stuff to do. So if all of a sudden now, you have to level to over 100 to get a max level gem to then do blah blah blah. But yeah, and again, thought experiment, because in that world you would also remove all that other stuff, and that makes things less interesting. So yeah, I mean, ultimately it's not great. But
es verdad, dice es trabajo de Nemesis, no de Nemesis.
Reevaluated. I can't say it's going to happen in the next 2 days, but you never know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and for the thought experiment, I think a lot of us would rather see like more awakened gems. I think they're very interesting with how they like change builds, especially the ones that do have something.
Nos gustaría ver más gemas awakened. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, have you ever thought about that, like double corrupting a gem turns it white?
¿Ha pensado de doble corromper una gema se vuelve blanca?
Like that could be one of the outcomes.
I mean, that is something we could probably consider doing at some point. I mean, that doesn't also have to be double corruption. It could be a different outcome somewhere else that you can do or something. But I mean, I see what you're like, making a gem be considered white, or effectively saying it can go in any color. It's a cool feature. It's nothing wrong as long as it is like end game, very high end game, the thing you do kind of at the end to seal the deal.
It doesn't have to be from the gem double corrupt, but
dice que alguna vez han pensado de que corromper una gema, doble corromperla, puede hacer que la gema se vuelva blanca. De tal forma que puede ir a cualquier parte.
Scarab of Preservation. Wow. Okay.
This is the classic FOMO scarab. Where now all of a sudden you don't want to use any other scarab unless you have this. But thankfully it's so rare that is improbable to actually happen.
Este es el scarab de FOMO.
Like,
es el que no quieres usar ningún otro escarabajo caro hasta que tengas
to exist. It is highly improbable that you're going to like. Well, there might be some people who are going to hold on to the other ones until you have this. But then again, you are juicing your map less. And if you're using all these other
es improbable que veas esto muy seguido. En otras palabras, lo voy a usar Fobun y Empyrean.
Actually use this, but then again, like getting these is going to be absurdly expensive and absurdly rare to the point where, like, you know, that's effectively like saying I'm not gonna. I mean, I don't know what the actual comparative drop weighting is, but it's effectively like saying like,
Mark
no, I'm not
muy
gonna run my best
ingenuo
scarabs unless I have a
aspecto.
mirror. And it's like, well, at some point you're just holding on to something for no real purpose. Like,
dice que va a ser tan raro que tal vez estás aguantándote usarlo por ningún propósito porque
potions or anything until like the very end.
That's not how it works, man.
Well, yeah, some people might.
Eso no funciona.
Yeah, a little bit of controversy.
Alguien en el equipo de Empyrean compra el escarabajo, pone el precio, o sea, lo fixean y de ahí en adelante ese es el precio del Scarab, lo compran ellos y bueno, ahora ellos van a guardarse todos los Scarabs que caigan en la primera semana y la segunda semana van a explotarlos.
Kind of tiers of mapping and juicing and whatnot.
And it does take up a slot.
Yes, it does. Yes, it has an opportunity cost, of course.
Yeah.
Quitan un slot, obviamente.
Cool. I mean, yeah. I mean, worst case scenario, you could even nerf it that has a limit of 2 and 50%. That wouldn't work. Never mind. Ignore that. We'll move on to the next one.
I mean, you could just make it 50% and keep it as is and make it less rare, which is a potential. Like, if it doesn't work, then that's on the cards. But we'll see.
So this one you showed in the video already. Puedes seleccionar una opción de crafteo imbuida en el map device.
A little bit, but I mean, I guess, I mean, it was kind of
self-evident. I've been asked a lot of questions about this too,
So this pretty much for every league, it gives a duplicated version of it on the crafting bench. And it gives that league and then some extra thing. So it's effectively like if you want to actually min-max your leagues, that's the way to do it. The second function it serves is that it can be used to nullify, as in the prefixes and suffixes will have no effect. That includes the quantity, rarity, pack size, and the downside. But I saw that as primarily you want to use that on tier 17s when you have modifiers that you can't. So you can use it to juice leagues, or you can use it to run tier 17s that your builds normally couldn't. I don't know if that's going to happen too often. I suspect more than likely you'd trade or swap it with someone, or just try and overcome the challenge or adapt.
Pero ahora hay que ver todas las opciones,
but the option's still there.
Pues cambiaron algunas, me parece.
What I do feel is it might be too rare to actually utilize it for that reason. And in which case, I could see a future in where we split this out into that functionality to separate scarabs, and we use because maybe that you want to be able to do that more often. So it might be that having this have the two functions is a bad decision, but we'll see how that plays.
Tal vez este escarabajo es muy raro para lo que queremos. Capaz podemos dividir este escarabajo a distintos tipos de escarabajos que hagan cosas distintas para que las puedas usar más. Porque ahorita que contengan todas las opciones que tiene, tal vez sea algo de optimizar de cuál es la mejor opción y por eso se usa, ¿no?
I wouldn't expect you to ever waste it on something below tier 17.
Yeah, because a concern some people had with this was that aren't you only ever going to use this for just one thing? Because it will be rare and expensive, so you'll only use it for its most expensive purpose?
Quite probably, yes. Which isn't necessarily a problem. But I agree that is not entirely ideal.
Dice que no es completamente ideal, pero dice que realmente no es un problema. O sea,
we can always balance up and down those things. Like that kind of implies,
el meta decide eso, nosotros.
We don't know what the meta is going to be for endgame. We don't know what people are going to necessarily use
después.
it for. And there certainly are players who aren't just like, I'm going to use it for that. But yes, it will be economically priced around that, and thus they will sell it for that. I get all that. Again, these aren't necessarily problems, because at the very least, what it means is that when you find it, you are like, yes, I just got a bunch of money. That's like in-game currency.
That's true.
That is a valuable thing to have, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm hoping the scarabs have added a lot more dopamine to drops in game, just world drops, right? Like you're just playing, and now you have a lot more opportunities to find something worth a lot. Hopefully it ends up being that way.
And have we been told yet where these, like the special scarabs, drop from?
Apenas carajos especiales.
Just world drops.
Oh, okay, cool.
Son drops generales.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'm a huge proponent of world drops.
Awesome.
I think it's...
All rare monster in area tienen al menos una recompensa.
The whole like double 2.5 timesing the drop rates of the extreme uniques and pulling back.
Los modificadores de item rarity, item quality no se aplican en el área. Oh, me encanta este escarabajo, este es mi escarabajo favorito.
things and not have it to be that like
este es mi jarabe favorito. Todos tienen una recompensa, pero el item rarity quality del jugador no se aplica en el área.
There is an inevitability
to this, but that is the game Scarab.
Choosing how I play the game, because how can you not be economically focused? You can not be, but most people are. And so the moment that that's happening, where it's like you should play this league because of this,
Scarab,
me encanta. Best way to get
I
these,
love it, dude.
And then you feel obliged to do it. Like, I don't like that because I want to play the game the way I want to play it.
Pues está bien, porque este es un MF de hacer el mapa más difícil, con más quantity, con todo eso, pero no tú con quantity. Me encanta.
Escarabajo anti-Kaku, no, Kaku. It's just that is often not very possible.
Eso se ve bueno.
Just due to, like,
igual los Horned Scarabs son los super raros.
It's a very hard thing to do, but at the very least, I don't want it to be that you feel so
dijeron que son
to do a single
drop
thing
genérico, cae en todas partes.
That everything else is completely off the cards, and so the big thing with the end game, this one. Sorry, one more thing is just I want you to play the game. I want you to play the game the way you want to play the game, and so this is the whole. The thing I'm talking about with the scrying orb goes further down that line. I want you to play what map you want to play. The multiple trees, I want you to play what leagues you want to play. I want you to play if you want to do bosses or not. I want you to play it that way. Because that's how I want to play it as well. And I don't ever want to be forced to do a single
Mark
thing
dice que
feel forced to do a single thing.
Es muy importante para él
now it's easy said for me because,
dar todas las opciones al jugador para que juegue como el jugador quiera jugar. Por eso tenemos los Atlas, por eso tenemos los escarabajos. Por eso estaba pensando en la orbe de cambiar las Divination Card de un mapa a otro. O sea, quiero que tú juegues como quieras. No queremos obligarte a jugar como nosotros queremos que juegues. Lo cual es bastante cool.
Uber, and there were 7 of them. I was like, are these Uber only drops? But yeah, cool. Very cool that they're world drops.
Coincidence. We designed more than 7. We just didn't get to the time to make more than 7.
Okay.
So
enseñaron más de 7 escarabajos OP, pero nada más llegaron a ser 7 por ahora.
Getting more. I did open
certainly at some point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did open horns. Also, the Scarab tab is going to be massive. That's going to be a big one.
Yeah, damn. I was meant to have a picture of it. The way it's actually sorted is like there's kind of like sets of 3 at the top, then sets of 4 for the ones because there's some that are leagues or pieces of content that have 3, and then at the bottom there's the 7s. But each of the little sets has the league symbol next to it, so you can kind of more easily identify the type of content they belong to.
De cómo es la tab de Scarabs, pero las vimos.
It is a lot more readable than it was before even.
Sí, pero a mí me parece está bien, o sea, el diseño está lindo.
Through some pictures there. I don't know if you can bring them up or whatever, but at some point, might be a bit hard to fit into your.
Yeah, no, I can. Yeah, it is very large. Let's see. I'm just gonna save it.
Está buscando la imagen para mostrarla.
Someone posted it. I can't see the names of who posted them, but I put. I was in a video, so it's come from chat because it was in a video.
Yeah, here's
some
the
it was probably in the video yesterday, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, aquí tienen.
Very cool. Yeah.
Luce bonito.
Is there a concern that this tab is going to be borderline mandatory? Is that something that you guys have discussed?
¿Sienten un problema de que esta tab sea como mandatoria?
I wouldn't say it's something we've discussed.
No es algo que hemos discutido, pero.
Right, 109 item slots. I mean, we at least increased the stack size, but certainly.
Al menos incrementamos el stack size.
Yeah, the stash tab stuff is a little bit kind of like obviously in that controversial space. I generally try and kind of stay out of that, but I understand why I probably shouldn't. I understand the level of like necessity our stash tab purchasing kind of is.
Mark dice que él trata de alejarse un poquito de la controversia de las stash tabs. Pero
you can argue a lot of our special ones are kind of in that mandatory territory right now, for sure.
Siente que algunos están como en el territorio de que es mandatorio algunas.
I don't know.
Pero
I don't know. I haven't really formulated much of an opinion on that one.
Es algo que tiene que formularse una opinión al respecto.
I will bring that up and evaluate with how we feel about
Dice que va a pensar al respecto, lo va a evaluar.
That we're kind of okay with it, but never know. This is the age of questioning original philosophies.
Estamos en la época de cuestionar las filosofías iniciales, así que con Path of Exile 2 en el medio hay muchas cosas que estamos discutiendo constantemente. Así que voy a agregar esto a la lista de cosas que estamos discutiendo. Me parece bien. Me parece muy bien. Me parece muy bien eso.
Cool,
o sea, directamente, o sea, sin bullshit, es como que sí, algunas tabs son mandatorias, algunas tabs son importantes. Simplemente vamos a meter esto en la lista y vamos a discutirlo. Porque, seamos sinceros, 109 escarabajos nuevos,
do something blah 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 blah, you know what I mean? Like I'm all about trying to not be the old dinosaur kind of thing. And
Barry, sí, estoy tratando de hacer todo lo posible para no ser el dinosaurio que decía en mis tiempos. Yo decía yo no quiero hacer eso. Quiero cosas que sean como más cómodas, pero por otro lado hay cosas que no quiero cambiar, como abrir las puertas. Tengo algunas creencias que todavía no van a cambiar, pero quién sabe.
I think
109 escarabajos, sí. 109 slots.
Players are very good at identifying what's wrong, but not always how to fix it.
Exacto, es mucho más abierto que Chris en este aspecto. Mucho. Chris diría así como que, bueno, si te gusta el juego, compra cosas para el juego. Si no, bueno, puedes crearte varias cuentas, dejamos que abras 2 clientes a la vez.
It's very easy to always just like, it can be pretty brutal.
Mira, esta 6 horas de 20, ven, ¿qué te quejas?
You do cave, and just to do the thing that is wanted, and you do cave on your philosophies and forever regret it and never be able to undo it. And so it is important to really take the time, actually identify the problem, and actually give the solution that is right. And an example of that going wrong was the like left mouse button thing, right? Like straight up, that is a like rushed decision where we did not give it enough time and give it enough thought.
Dice que es muy importante para ellos y para Mark también pensar la solución correcta al problema, identificar bien el problema, porque si no, si te apresuras a dar una solución como lo del clic izquierdo, causa problemas en otros lados. Y si no es obvio que es la decisión correcta, se va a notar.
But it is one of those things where if you increase like the item pickup range, we cannot reduce it ever. Like that is it. It is stuck there now forever. And so you cannot get that wrong, because if it's now wrong, you just have to deal with it. And it sucks to work on something where you're just like, I made this mistake and now it has hindered this forever, and we just have to deal with it. And you constantly have this memory in your head of just like,
Dice que hay algunas cosas como el pickup range, o sea, agarrar los ítems del piso, que si ponemos un rango muy alto, podemos aumentarlo. Pero no podemos bajarlo. Entonces es muy importante que demos en el clavo en eso, porque si no, no vamos a poder cambiarlo nunca.
Well, again, I am happier. I do still believe, and I have covered this a bit, that this is the lesser of evils. And we have done some changes around that and whatnot, and that is cool and good. But I would like to do a better solution later for sure, where it becomes not evil at all. So yeah, I stick by that. I believe it is currently in a better state.
Dice que el clic izquierdo es algo que
if I didn't actually believe that, and if the others here didn't believe that as well, and I'm not saying everyone here believes that.
Dice que siente que lo que están haciendo ahorita va a mejorar el juego. Ahora, tiene una parte negativa, 100% tiene una parte negativa, y queremos revisitarlo y hacer una mejor solución. Pero ahora mismo esto es mejor que lo que estaba antes.
A lot of people are not going to agree with me on that one, and that's perfectly fine. I would just say play it and try it and see how you actually feel and how it actually adapts your builds, because that is one insight that we have that you do not currently have. I know theoretical is often just as good as practical, but in this case,
lo peor es que yo sé,
see how you feel about it.
Topetín es un jeque, men, entonces me da miedo.
1 week or 1 day, it's completely out of sight, out of mind, and you don't feel any different about it one way or another. And it's like, I would put it as another phrase or another way of like,
lo del clic izquierdo,
this isn't great because it's a bit of a cop-out, but there are much bigger fish to fry. And so it's kind of like, would you want us to be solving that, or do you want us to be solving, some other mega problem that I won't necessarily say right now?
Okay, like dice que desgraciadamente tenemos un problema. A veces tenemos problemas más grandes, como que quieres que estemos resolviendo el problema del left click, o prefieres que resolvamos el tema del trade, por ejemplo.
Effectively, what I like to do, just to give a bit of insight there, is I like to gather all the problems. I put them all on a board, and I kind of write, like, here are my tier 1 problems, my tier 2 problems, my tier 3 problems, and kind of like, okay, we have enough to do this, 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 and this. Is this the right set of things we should be fixing this time or changing this time? But then you see all these other things that you don't have time for, and you're like, oh, that'd be so good to fix, like so good. So you kind of try and get them in there anyway, and then you end up with overworking and overscoping and causing a problem. And so, like, that can have a pretty negative impact as well, obviously, because now you're doing stuff without giving them the time, and so like. But do rest assured, we are doing like everything possible.
Mark, para dar un poquito de insight, dice que ellos tienen todos los problemas anotados en una pizarra y empieza él a poner estos son los problemas tier 1, los problemas tier 2, los problemas tier 3 y trata de meter la mayor cantidad de cosas para resolver en cada liga, pero a veces no da chance de hacer absolutamente todo. Es así de simple. Y dice que a veces se sienten como que, pero si pudiéramos resolver este problema sería tan bueno, y a veces lo ponen tan bien y terminan con más trabajo, terminan con un scope muy grande y no logran hacer cosas, y eso estresa, entonces tampoco quiere como que ponerle demasiado trabajo a sus trabajadores.
I'm enjoying it a lot. Horned Scarab of Tradition.
Ahorita vamos a hablar del clic izquierdo también.
One reward modifier. Players modifier to item rarity and item quantity do not apply.
Yeah, so I wanted this one to be like, you obviously this one you can use without feeling obliged to have to run a Magic Find character.
Exacto. Este es
because otherwise you would be like, I'm obviously going to save this until I'm an MFer.
Pero no eres Magic
Find.
Find.
That whole, holding out on that one until you are. So, yep, we just pretty much went with the, give something super rewarding, but also make it that any player feels like they can do it and they don't need to run some MF strat in order to do it, or MF build in order to do it, which I think is pretty cool.
So, question, it does say player modifiers. Does that mean if you're in a 6-man group, that will work?
Yes, that will work. Yeah, sure.
Aren't you worried that you'll sort of have the same problem? Like, I won't run this solo. I'll feel forced to run it in a 6-man group?
Well, that can be said about mostly everything, I guess. Like, you could argue one way. Like, it is the case that you get the most out of your map there. I agree with you. And again, this does have opportunity cost. Your map is not as juiced as it was. So, like, you can argue whether or not it's better. But that can be said about the whole game. Like, is it better to run multiple people or is it better to run solo? That is an eternal argument.
Dice que va a aplicar el efecto del party, la respuesta es sí, por lo tanto no te vas a sentir como que tienes que hacer este mapa con 6 personas.
I obviously like running in parties.
Yeah.
And then you know what happens? We get like a little bit later into the league and my friends are all, fully decked out in gear, and all of a sudden all I'm doing is following around an immortal, completely powerful character that has no issue killing anything anyway. And I am now getting 50% of the drops, of which is, it goes up by 31% quantity and some rarity per player, and then that's divided by 2. So like now he's getting 40% less drops because I'm getting my portion, and he's probably thinking like, "Fucking get out of here! I don't want you with me." Like, but at the start of the league, they're like, "Oh yeah, run support, come help us out," and then like a week later, it's like, "Can you just go away? I don't want you here. You're taking my items that I don't need you for." So. There's for someone who knows, that benefit, it is certainly the case that
para alguien que sepa cómo funciona exactamente el party, a veces tener un party de 2 personas, de 3 personas, realmente no es algo que todos reciben más. Es que hay más, pero cuando lo divides, realmente es menos.
Hold off on that one for that, but I mean. If they do, I guess, is also a thing.
I was just curious. Yeah. That was a great answer. We have 2 more.
2 más.
Actually, we have 3 more scarabs.
3 más. Glittering.
Of glittering. Recently.
So this is kind of like that Whakawairua Tuahu map, which I'm sure most people don't know how to pronounce.
Sí.
Though I think I heard people calling it the Waka Laka Laka map and stuff like that.
No, es la primera vez que escucho eso bien.
Obviously without the light radius. It initially had the light radius in it, and then I was like, oh no, like now everyone's just gonna be saving this until they have their maxed out light radius build. So even though that sounds fun, I don't think it's right for kind of core content like
El mapa único que mientras más matas tienes un radio de luz más alto, y mientras más radio de luz tengas más drop tienes.
Bueno. That it won't be as useful. However, if you're not running a Magic Find build, this is obviously going to be far more useful for you, and kind of same principle. So we tried to focus on some that are like
90% de rarity o 100% de quantity si has matado recientemente.
Following the whole Deadeye Magic Find build meta kind of shenanigans. That will still probably happen, but at least these can be used to kind of really take your I want to get as much as possible, and I'm confident that I'm not going to die 6 times and run. Either of these, or I guess both together with them.
I do want to potentially prompt a tangent here, but I'm really curious since I saw it says recently, and recently it's not too bad, but nearby can be a little bit convoluted. Like instead of having a number on it, it's like every nearby is different.
Está hablando de recently y nearby.
I mean, it's almost a bit of a meme at this point.
Casi que un meme a este punto.
I think it's like nearbys are consistent within a given context. Nah, in fact, I don't even want to say that. You know what? I actually don't know. I would say that, like, is this... How much of a problem is this really? I mean,
¿Qué tanto problema es esto realmente?
Obviously, to the scarab. I don't know if any of the scarabs have anything nearby.
Ningún
and then you're getting a bit of
nearby.
like, in your presence is another thing you have, which is like, what does that mean as well? And how is that not nearby? But yeah, I agree. There's some weird inconsistencies there. I think
algunas inconsistencias
Mark
ahí.
1, the other Mark,
El otro
handles... I'm Mark 2, by the way. We get numbers here. We there's no Mark 3 yet, thankfully. And then some people, you know, we have... Mark and I have had a long feud of... I say the Mark 2, the upgrade, is better, and he thinks that the classics are always truer to the core. And so him and I, are, you know, we're at contentions about who's the better Mark. I would just say we'll never know. But he's the one that handles a lot of the descriptions. He's the one you see on Reddit doing all the explanations for how mechanics work and all that. Like, that guy is a hub of knowledge. And I think he also is, like, you know, working the best he can with the designers requesting shenanigans. Which, of course, I include myself in that.
Mark 1, que es el que se encarga de escribir todo y tiene muchísimo conocimiento, está trabajando lo mejor que puede con las locuras que se le ocurren a los diseñadores, incluido Neon.
And then it's like, now you can't use nearby, but you still kind of want to, because otherwise now the descriptions are getting a bit out of control. And, you know, look, imperfection is certainly the case, but it falls under the category of, like, bigger fish to fry again. Like, these aren't just immediately solvable, and they may have an impact on balance. It may seem very, very, very easy, and that is true, but, like, even like a couple of hours of work has a cost, you know?
Dice
like,
que
we are working full time. We don't just have infinite resources and people that can handle all the stuff. And so
dice que incluso este problema me parece fácil, tiene un montón de implicaciones, cosas que tienen que ver con balance, etc. Así que incluso si es un par de horas, tiene un costo. Es lo que es por ahora, pero es algo que va para la pizarra.
Pandemonium. Wow.
Monster Packs tienen que tener chance de ser reemplazados por un random boss del Atlas. Modificadores al final del mapa se aplican a estos bosses.
Where they do get the drops, and the extra map bosses are the extra, like, you know, the map drops and the guardian drops and all of that as well. I'm pretty sure that's what that bottom line does indicate. So,
wow,
it's a lot. Yes,
that's so cool.
Monster Packs.
Wow.
Tú puedes tener como 50 packs en un mapa.
Sure, yeah, this one actually indicates random, where that other one didn't, which makes me think, like, they work differently, but I have a suspicion it's just someone did the descriptions on one and someone else did it on the other. Yeah. I will verify that and make sure that they actually are.
Dice que esta dice random, así que tal vez dos personas te hicieron las descripciones, voy a verificarlo después.
The last scarab. Oh, air contains the nameless seer.
Air contiene el nameless seer. Okay.
Yeah, because why not?
Because why not?
Obviously, they don't cost dust because there isn't any dust. It's just he'll give you one. And,
Nameless Seer.
Like, I think in
va a estar nerfeado,
it took all of your dust away when you bought it.
Yeah.
Nameless Seer es el NPC que te vendía algo al azar. O tenía un montón de únicos y puedes comprar uno solo en Affliction.
Sort of biasing to make it so that, like, more rarer ones are more likely to be there.
Guachín de los únicos, ese mismo.
It is better than.
De ahí salieron Headhunters, Mage
Awesome.
Demás.
That was all the scarabs. Wow, there's so many, and there are more coming too. So we haven't even seen all of them yet.
Yo literal no lo vi una sola vez.
Yeah, there are 109 total. And I think, what was that?
Yo no lo vi una vez. Vi los clips y las cosas, pero nunca lo vi.
In between.
That's crazy. I love how many different ones and how much, like, player autonomy we're getting over the game.
O sea, los únicos de un set. Sí, eso es lo que nos va a salir, pero ya vas a ver los clips después de la gente. de la gente sacando de todo ahí y nosotros una tabula con suerte.
I think I got through most. I did want to go over like some of the Gravecraft stuff. I know.
Yeah, that's the next
we can
one.
go over that. Technically, some of that. So we could just get into that. Is all good, and I'll
Vamos a mostrar los teasers de las cosas de los monstruos enterrados.
It starts to kind of show how powerful it can be.
Que empieza a mostrar qué tan fuerte es, lo que justamente quería ver.
I will probably, I'll start by loading the image of that, and then we can talk about the league mechanic and things like that.
You
have to resize it a bit.
Find it also, that way I don't have
Belt is an Stygian base.
Any forms of stream delay and whatnot.
Bueno, ok, una de las dudas que tenía era en qué base puede caer eso. Ya está resuelta. Hay bases acá.
All right, I mean, we
creates an experimented
down,
weapon.
But I'll give a bit of background on just like the league itself. So, you ultimately, as you
rolea la base 5 veces quedándose con el tipo de base con el mayor requerimiento de nivel.
When you create an area during this league,
yeah.
You can they harder monsters, and you can
10% de chance de crear una copia mirror.
So there are special
you motherfucker, quiero ver la otra parte.
They can be collected, and the Undertaker comes out and takes them back to the
What are you doing?
Stores them in the morgue, and then you can go back there and do some crafting. I will point out, I'm gonna there's a couple changes here. So yeah, you can store a limited amount in the Necropolis. But the first thing I notice is in the top left, you've got an 11 out of 27, assuming we have the same image.
We do.
That 27 is the capacity, but we have actually just expanded that. I think it's like 60 now or something. So you can store a lot, and because we were having annoying pressure, you want some pressure. You don't want to have infinite storage. You want to feel like you should engage with it or itemize them and trade them. But it's another thing you'll notice.
Guardar
like
hasta 60 monstruos.
Don't release with things like itemizing crafts and itemizing the capacity to trade them.
Chance de fracturar, crea un Vermilion Ring.
A pressure, and then you kind of just have to engage with the trading.
Requiere al menos otro cuerpo del mismo nombre.
To kind of make sure that you can trade them, you can itemize them, and you can deal with all that. And we've also, due to the
60 parece poco, lo puedes itemizar, recuerda. Bueno, los puedes itemizar. Así que realmente puedes comprar las vainas y guardarlas en tu stash.
Probably was yesterday. We've increased
sí, dijo que era 27, era antes que lo cambiaron a 60.
Like that, so you can have 60 collected corpses, crafts at a given time. Might be 50 something, I don't know, some number around there.
Yeah. So how often are you anticipating that you go into a crafting session?
¿Cada cuánto vas a ir a una sesión de crafteo?
So it's early in the game, it's a lot more frequent.
Al principio del juego va a ser muy frecuente. You're just wanting rare items, and you don't really engage too much with what the mods are actually doing. Solo te interesan los mods raros, así que no vas a interactuar tanto con qué hacen los mods.
Sets the minimum links to X and Y to help with sockets while going through the game.
Cosas que te ayudan con los sockets, etc.
Minimum to 5 and stuff like that. There is stuff like that. But you aren't caring too much about what they're doing early in the game as you're progressing through. But like, if you just want a targeted rare item at any point, you just go make it. So if you want if you think your amulet's weak, you can go literally craft one corpse at a time.
Eso me gusta.
During the live stream,
no lo he mencionado tanto, pero me gusta mucho eso. Me gusta que durante el principio de la campaña, dice, tengo un amuleto de mierda, pero no consiguió nada bueno. Simplemente voy y me hago un amuleto.
Reads his whole dialogue out, and it's real epic, and his voice is awesome, and all that. But it's also like, okay, are you telling me I got to wait like 6, 8 seconds? I don't even 9 seconds, I think it was, for each craft. So we've done like a short version. So if you're doing less than, I think, 5 corpses, it does a short version, and if you're doing more, it does the longer version. So he cuts half the dialogue out, and he just reads the last, like, the punchline, so to speak.
Dependiendo de cuántos cuerpos usas para el craft, tienes una versión larga en la que habla mucho el tipo y una versión corta en la que habla poco.
Like 50 graves at once, and you're like, oh my god, this needs to be the best item ever.
Si vas a hacer como 15 tumbas a la vez, es un poquito más largo el diálogo porque sientes que quiere que sea el buen item y tal.
That's fine, break it as much as you want. But you want that, like, please be good, and so you get that, like,
entre modo rap, exacto.
And you're like, oh my god, I'm using this is like 100 divines worth of corpses I'm using here, like, please be good. And then it comes out, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, and there's that moment where you mouse over it, and you have that, like, kind of, you know, your heart stops for like a little bit. So I like that kind of pre-craft stress, which is way more dramatic than just like, hits craft and the item immediately changes to some other state.
Dice que le parece que es más dramático que el tipo diga algo, que tarde un momentico, que el item no caiga en tu mano, entonces tú tienes que pasar el mouse por ahí, que te dé un mini infarto antes de verlo, porque gastaste 100 divines en cuerpos y esperas de que sea algo bueno. En otras palabras, ¡gamba!
Yeah, that was gonna be my follow-up question. If this is something that people don't like, and you know, if they've done this for like a month, and it's like, wow, I'm getting really tired of these animations when we're crafting like 2,000 items, is that something you would be open to, like either like a toggle to skip that, or?
The way it's set up, skipping it is hard, but it can be done. But I don't think I want that because I like that suspense, and I don't know if it will. I don't want to do it based on a theoretical problem yet. Like if that is a problem, we will adjust it. I actually find it's quite. Like,
dice que si ha pasado un mes y la gente está harta de la duración para craftear un item, lo que voy a cambiar, dice que él no quiere pensar en una solución para un problema teórico, pero si es un problema, van a buscar cómo cambiarlo.
And so we're talking now, you're like sacrificing 9 seconds every like, you know, some large number of maps.
Sí, o sea, seamos sinceros.
It's the
Si son
proportion that
9
matters. Whereas if you're
segundos.
sacrificing 9 seconds every single time you do one item with one grave, like that's a problem. 100%. So,
si son 9 segundos y tardas un montón de mapas y pierdes 9 segundos, pierdes entre comillas, es como que a quién importa. Pero si son 9 segundos cada vez que haces un item con una sola tumba, es un problema.
However,
no va a ser que estuviera
okay,
3.
so these graves, I mean, yeah, so you get collecting corpses, the harder the modifier and the more likely that they will yield a collectible corpse. So making the league harder gives you more crafts, and making the league easier gives you less crafts. So there is...
Le hubieran pedido a Zizaran quitar las cosas de las epox del fondo, pero tiene el casco de las epox.
So yeah, there is you can control your own difficulty, but you want to make it harder to get more of these.
Yo no creo que le pidan nada.
So that's just some very
aparte de que ya hablaron en el
so
podcast, nombraron a Diablo 4 y nombraron a la epox también la otra vez, o sea, no creo que tenga nada que ver con eso.
Plus 100 a physical modifier tier rating. So that's a little bit confusing, and we've gone through so many different versions of this trying to figure out how to make it less. The way that works, so plus 100 will mean that the bottom 50% of physical modifiers will not be able to roll on the item.
Oh.
So you have obviously your tier 1, you have your merciless, your tyrannical, etc., all the way down. Forget the names of all the others. The bottom half will not be able to. On your stream, you might want to get
I've done it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the bottom half will not roll, and it makes the other ones more common. But not, it's like kind of proportionately more common. It's not like that weighting loss goes into the weighting directly. It's kind of like, it's a little bit nebulous, but ultimately it does cut off bad mods. And this is something obviously people have been asking for with a lot of stuff.
De rating lo que hace es básicamente,
you can't get your like +5 life
con suficiente rating te saltas los mods más bajos.
So yeah, if you run enough of those,
hubo alguien que me lo dijo en el chat de Patreon, que estaba pensando que era así y yo no creo que sea así porque nunca lo han hecho así, pero es así. Es la opción de Gnosis. Que Gnosis estaba teorizando eso cuando lo leyó y yo le dije, mira, no creo que sea así, pero es así, tenía razón, ¿eh? Sí. No es 100% determinístico, pero te quita toda la mierda. O sea, si tienes 20 tiers, mucho, 10 tiers, y tienes suficiente más algo de rating, te saltas los primeros 5 tiers. Y ahora solamente tienes 5 tiers.
And then if you did another plus 100, you cut off the bottom 2/3, and then
todos fueron ahora.
So it's compressing them up into a point. There's some like kind of, I guess, nuances around that where it's kind of like, at some point, cutting off tyrannical, you probably actually want to only cut off. I know this is like some advanced player mathematical stuff. You probably only want to cut off up until tyrannical, so keeping tyrannical and merciless, because if you cut off tyrannical, merciless is so rare that like you still probably won't get it. So if you want like, but if you're looking for best in slot, like you still want to, this is still your way to get it. We're certainly doing some internal mega grave crafts, and you're getting like triple T1s and whatnot. Like, it is certainly very plausible.
Dice que, bueno, esto es algo más avanzado, pero dice que si estás cortando demasiados mobs al punto de que te estás quedando solamente con Merciless, que es el tier 1, es tan raro que puede que ni siquiera lo consigas, aún si cortas todo lo demás. Por lo tanto, tal vez quieres quedarte con Tyrannical y con Merciless. Pero hemos hecho muchos crafts y conseguimos triple tier 1 múltiples veces.
I don't know. I'm still not. I'll get a few more. I'll get a few more just in case, just to damn well make sure I can't, I get this thing or I can't get that thing. And then there are some which are more deterministic. And some of the others are pretty crazy in here.
Cool.
So yeah, that's how that top one works.
Damn, dude.
I was wondering how
Boros está teniendo un orgasmo ahora mismo.
In a group.
I think we have it.
¿Cuántos mirrors, Boros? ¿Cuánto le calculas?
But I think it's the classic, like...
No pasa nada, Boros. Tú me escribes por primero y me dices qué hacer.
Everyone has a 50% chance to get a random other one.
Tú solo dime qué hacer y yo lo hago en tu nombre.
Like that, which obviously now brings into my mind, like, if you're... I know when your Necropolis is full, or nearly full, he comes out whenever you collect a corpse, and then you can talk to him and, like... itemize them or cremate some stuff. So I actually want to go double check how that works, because in party I could see a case of like you're not getting your bonus ones and you're unaware because it's full. I think it does output in text as well that it's like your thing is full, like, or it's getting close. I'll just double check all of that's there, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's the classic. Like a lot of leagues do that, like Essences, for example, they just have a chance to drop a bonus one for each party member and stuff like that. So yeah, it doesn't give the exact same one though, I'm pretty sure, but again, I will...
Cuando estás en party te dropean cuerpos adicionales, pero no exactamente el mismo. Hacen lo mismo que en otras ligas, que es como que un chance de que ocurra y ocurran en otros cuerpos distintos.
I'm the Aurobot guy. I try and make sure the leagues work in a party, and
makes sense.
When they don't, I get sad.
And you mentioned like getting full. Is this something? Can we delete bad ones, or do we have to pay 1 chaos to delete one?
¿Podemos deletear los malos?
There'll be a little flame symbol, so you can cremate the corpse.
Okay.
You can just click that. Yeah.
Puedes cremar el cuerpo. Si no te gusta, lo puedes cremar y ya.
And in areas, he can come in. He comes in when they're nearly full. You can bring up this UI, and you have a little cremate symbol next to all. And then you can go to the Necropolis and do it while looking at them on the table, or you can do it you can invite them to your hideout and do it from there as well. So,
puedes invitarlos a hacerlo en tu hideout, puedes hacerlo en Necropolis, o puedes hacerlo cuando te lo consigas en el mapa. Fantástico.
And another thing, like I don't want to. There's so many things for still.
Hay muchos que están preguntando del 11 a 27. Esos no son 27 del máximo, lo van a aumentar y dicen que va a ser 50 y tantos o 60. Alrededor de eso.
Okay, that's more than happy to do.
Así que don't worry. Que eso era algo como que sacaron antes.
Unique different stats that we haven't seen, and we can still influence these afterwards, like those items, the rares, and use either Eldritch Currency or Exalted Orbs, etc.
Yes, you can. Can you? I don't see why you wouldn't. It creates the item. It should be that you can do that. I think it might be that some of the mods are in the same family. So if you can, say, for example, get +1 charges from this, I think then that is in the same mod family, as we call it, as +1 charges from influence. So you might not be able to get like double up on that. But I'm actually not too sure if they went with that way or not. But I feel like probably it is going to be that way. I'm just not 100% certain.
Hay mods especiales en los items y probablemente los mods OP son de la misma familia que el otro mod OP.
One of the crafts is like +1 affix, and yeah, we are finding that like end game you actually don't want to use, like you generally craft 4 or 5 affix items so you can then do some level of manipulation to them afterwards. That's certainly a thing that is happening.
Por lo tanto, o sea, conseguir que sí más uno de los power charges y después craftearle otra power charge adicional que sí con la influencia del Warlord probablemente no sea posible, pues son de la misma familia.
Es
como cuando es como el physical taken as algún elemento. Eso obviamente no puedes tener varios, pues son de la misma familia. Algo de crafteo un poquito más avanzado, pero los que entendieron. Si no entendiste, no te preocupes, no es algo que te vaya a afectar. Don't worry.
The Stygian Vice one has an orange border. It's not meant to. That's only for the unique ones. That's a bug. We fixed that yesterday, but again, I can't be bothered taking another screenshot. The way you get those is from the itemized packs. So there are like itemized abyss monsters.
Lo que se ven así son los que vienen de los packs itemizados.
Drops exclusively from abyss content. I think maybe only from depths, and that one will be the one that can give you this. So
o sea que hay algunos en particulares que solamente te dan algunos mods. En otras palabras, si quieres conseguir algo, tienes que farmear eso. Es parecido como a las bestias.
Some of them are like you really want to like, there are rewards for running different types of content that are kind of subtle in the league. And
eso
then
es cierto,
I'm just
como
going to
que muy
explain a couple
inteligente.
others. So if we go down, some of these are pretty
Los
self-explanatory.
packs los puedes reemplazar con las embers, correcto.
We'll look at the 20% chance to create a mirrored copy.
Yeah.
So that can, obviously, you can put 5 of
Eso
them,
puedes
you get
stackear
100.
y tener
If you put 10 of
100%.
them, you can get 200, and now you get 3 of the item, and so on and so forth.
Si le pones
So if you're doing your like
10,
ultra epic crafts, there's always these things where you want to like put as many as possible to get as many as you can out of it.
puedes sacar varias
Again, it might be a
copias.
bad item, or it might be the best item ever, and now you've got a whole bunch of them. Same with fracture. So that's like you put 4 of them, 1 mod's fractured. If you put another one, it's 1 mod's fractured
de
with a
fracture
25%
es
chance
un
of
mod.
a second mod fractured, so on and so forth. You can just get it with all 6 mods
Si tienes
fractured or
8,
whatever you
doble
want to do
fracturado.
there.
Oh
So,
my god. Dude.
some of these, again, you want to be planting a lot of them or burying a lot of them if you want to, ensure you get kind
Double
of the best
fracture.
results. And you can easily see how you can fill up the entire kind of graveyard of. We've added more graves lately, but it's like nearing like 80 to 100 kind of territory of graves that you want to do.
Está en el territorio de 80
you could
a
be doing
100
a project pretty
tumbas.
rarely, or if you're trading, you could be doing these projects a lot more frequently.
That's so cool.
But again, yeah. And
So
while
we're
leveling,
mad scientists this league.
yeah, I'm hoping. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be broken in some way, like, of course.
Mark dice que está seguro que va a estar
and
roto de
I'm
alguna forma.
completely happy with that. There might be some level of broken that we'll have to be like, this is not okay. But
Tal vez hay un nivel de
we'll
roto que digamos esto es demasiado, pero
yeah, I'm very keen to see what people are going to get out of this.
dice que está muy interesado de qué van a hacer la gente de
meta
esto.
ones as well, like. In here, there's like one that's
Tienes que congelar la una y no me cabe de
requires
otra.
at least one other corpse of the same monster
Esta es la liga de poros, me está crafteando unas locuras.
I don't mean name as in like the randomly generated name. That's just like, you get a devourer, you need a second devourer. And when you plant that, and then you plant another devourer that has, or whatever, if that Vermilion ring one drop with a devourer, and now it'll create a Vermilion ring. And obviously the ones that override the base type are mutually exclusive. It's meant to prevent you from burying things that are going to like conflict. So if you have a bone ring one down already, you then can't also put down a minion wand one.
Ok, dice que los que son exclusivos no te va a permitir poner más de uno. Por ejemplo, el de Vermilion Ring, si ya tienes plantado uno que te dé un anillo, un Ruby, no te va a permitir poner el de Vermilion porque no puedes tener un anillo de 2 tipos a la vez.
It's gonna be so fun to look at like the different stuff people come up with and
esto va a ser súper fumado. Yo quiero saber si va a haber alguna forma de garantizar un fracturado de más uno a algo.
Yeah, next up we have tier 17 drops and stuff. A lot of people have been asking a little bit more about like specifically how they're obtained. Like we are not going to be running them permanently, right? Unless you're buying them.
Well, again, trade.
Tier 17, ¿los vamos a poder hacer constantemente o los vamos a tener que comprar?
No, right. A tier 17 cannot drop a tier 17.
Un tier 17 no puede comprar un tier 17, eso ya lo habían dicho.
Self-sustaining.
Así no tienen auto-sustain.
Intentionally by design.
Por diseño.
Tier 17s, obviously there are like the mods might be too hard and some
algunos mods pueden ser muy difíciles. Algunos no vas a poder hacerlos porque tu personaje no puede con esto o lo tradearlos, etc.
There are going to be ones, or use that scarab and you get around some mods,
o usar
un
escarabajo y saltarlo.
But then there are, so there's the drops. So void stones are the things that give you the chance for them to upgrade.
Yeah.
Now we showed them at 0.5% per 0.5% chance per socketed voidstone, which is kind of effectively how grand spectrums work. Now I think it's been lowered to 0.4, but I'll explain what our intention is with how many you're getting shortly. But the way that works is, so it's not 0.4 plus 0.4 plus 0.4 plus 0.4. Each one, so the first one is 0.4, then the second one is 0.4 times 2 plus 1.6.
Yeah.
And then, whatever that math goes. So it ends up with, when it was at 0.5, it was 8%. So 0.5, then 2, then 4, then 8. So yeah, times
No sé por qué se complican haciéndolo así, pero básicamente estoy diciendo de que cada Voidstone va a darte 0,4% de chance de que conviertas un mapa tier 15 DOT tier 16 en tier 17. Pero 0,4 no es que es 0,4 más 0,4 más 0,4, es 0,4 por 0,4 por 0,4 por 0,4. Es... ¿Por qué no lo ponen directamente? Bro, es 5%, después es cada uno de 7, whatever.
You're running a red map, you've got like pretty much, or you're at tier 16s, you've got most of your atlas filled in on like an average thing. You're doing kind of like, you know, mid-tier alking a map with some basic investment here and here, and like you're averaging 1 to 2 scarabs.
El anuncio decía 0,5, pero dijeron que el número era demasiado alto porque es multiplicativo, no es aditivo.
And we're kind of aiming for like a 1 in 5 at that point.
Y sí, están tratando de apuntar a que tengas 1 en 5.
But because the drops do have a diminishing return, so 7 or 6.4% or whatever is actually, it's decent. Sure, it might sound low, but like, you know, you can get a decently large amount of tier 16s in a map. So you'll get, the first one has that chance to convert, and then sequential ones have less and less chance.
Yeah.
And again, this is because initially when we were doing it, we were balancing around super juices, and we're like, which means your average person who's just like Alkin going is like pretty much never going to get them, because the differential between those two in terms of item drops is just enormous, right? So
yeah.
Dice que están primero balanceando alrededor de los users, pero dice que la persona promedio nunca lo va a ver. Entonces,
we don't often do diminishing returns, but in this case, I think it's warranted to give the average player a better experience.
Yeah.
O sea que ahora lo que van a hacer es que cada mapa que te caiga significa que el siguiente mapa tiene menos chance de caer. Por lo tanto, para los users que dropean 500 mapas en un mapa, no va a pasar eso ahora. Van a dropear menos mapas. Pero dicen que esto está balanceado alrededor de la persona promedio y no del user. ¿Qué parece? Está bien.
Oh.
En este caso, so, está bien.
Running different maps to farm. Now this is good and bad. This means if I just want to farm my Crimson Temple or my Cemetery, it means you're getting the same tier 17 always. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. This could be a good thing and a bad thing. Like, it might mean you want the diversity and you want all the different tier 17 tile sets or layouts, but I'd say this gives you that agency. You can now go, I just want this one or I just want that one, and if you want to do multiple like different maps with different atlas trees and stuff like that, you can do that and aim for different tier 17s. Now that's relevant ideally because you're choosing what boss you want to get, which you can choose the unique they drop, and obviously the tile set, and thus the signature monsters and all that, because some of those can be pretty brutal.
Aquí me salté algo y no estoy seguro si se refiere a que vamos a poder decidir qué tier 17 pueden caer, o sea, como bloquear los tier 17.
Yeah.
Because now, it's not a 1 tier 17 to 1 fragment ratio. Each boss can drop all fragments, but they are biased towards a specific 3.
Okay.
So if you want to get certain uber pinnacle bosses, you want to farm specific tier 17s to get higher efficiency. And if you want to just get all of them, then you can just map freely. But you have the control there.
Los fragmentos de los Uber bosses salen al azar, pero hay unos mapas que tienen más chance de que salgan que en otros. Por lo tanto, si quieres algún Uber boss en particular, farmear un mapa en particular te da más chance. Eso lo están hablando.
But eventually you'll trickle all the other ones as well.
So one thing I was wondering about, because obviously right now access to Ubers it's super accessible, right? You just click a button and then you're running the normal imitations. How much less accessible is Ubers going to be now?
¿Qué tan menos accesibles van a ser los Ubers en comparación a lo que hay ahora?
Well, obviously a lot less.
Por supuesto, mucho menos.
You could argue like, you know, how common were Guardian maps before versus how common are tier 17s now. You do need 5 of the fragments from the tier 17s, and if we're saying an average player gets 1 in 5 average maps, then to get 5 tier 17s, you need to
ahorita lo pongo arriba, pero gracias,
be doing 25 maps.
Ahorita hago otro, no te preocupes.
But then the Guardian drops were like, what was it? 3% base for a Shaper Guardian, and then another 3% from the tree, which is like a 6% chance for 1 Guardian. Now that's not necessarily, that's like where those generally come from just spamming, and obviously you can invest into heaps of ways to, duplicate your maps and all of that, and you can still technically do a lot of that.
Está hablando de qué tan profundos son los mapas de los guardianes para hacer una relación con los tier 17.
I mean, almost certainly I'd say they're less accessible, but I wouldn't say by too much.
Okay.
And I'd say the tier 17s are quite challenging as a nice bridge in between that anyway. So it's like, it should be, I think it'll make, I like it in the way that it's going to make it that, you're doing them maybe a bit more occasionally. You can also still do the non-Uber pinnacle bosses in the meanwhile, while you're still mapping. You're still getting all of those, and they have exclusive drops. So hopefully the value of doing them is still something.
Yeah.
Está hablando de que son menos accesibles los Ubers ahora, pero no tanto, y lo más importante es que puedes hacer los otros también, porque tienen drops distintos, y los tier 17 es un desafío considerable, al punto en que es un buen puente entre lo que es el normal y el Uber.
Trading or doing some sort of ridiculous strat to get as many as possible and just spamming them all the time. And that might now be harder, but also you can still trade for that, and you can certainly optimize the amount of them you're running. But yeah, the different drops also means, and if they are more scarce, it only means that the drops from them are more valuable as well, which is obviously a good trade-off that happens. So I can't say with certainty one way or the other, but that's kind of generally how it works and our expectations, and it's always changeable. So
yeah, cool. I did want to inquire a little bit about the design philosophy difference there between, obviously, we already in the game right now have normal Itziri, and you run normal Itziri and you get the Uber fragments, versus now this is from a completely different source. I would love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
Tenemos el Itziri normal, o sea, el Itziri normal te da fragmentos por el Uber Itziri, mientras que aquí sale de una fuente completamente distinta. Habla un poquito de eso.
Okay, the first time it's kind of fine. If you were to I do Shaper X times and now I do Uber Shaper, maybe you fail. Perfect. But let's say you now conquer Uber Shaper and you want to do it more, you want to utilize it, you want to farm from it. And then I'm telling you the way to do that is to farm a bunch of this content that you have already proven completely capable of doing. It just becomes boring. Mm-hmm. You have to do multiple shapers to get to do Uber Shaper. And you could argue, well, it's just one. It's still the same problem. I don't want you to have to go and do a bunch of content that is clearly trivialized to you. Okay. The non-Uber version of Shaper.
La razón por la que estamos haciendo de esta forma es porque si tú ya puedes vencer al boss normal y es algo trivial para ti, no queremos obligarte a que hagas el boss normal para hacer el boss difícil.
A tier 17 might be easy and then the next one might be very, very hard. So there are going to be points where they have certain modifiers and they actually might even be harder than the Uber Pinnacle, but at least they're different. Whereas Shaper versus Uber Shaper, again, if you've conquered one, the other is just, it's not entertaining really at that point. It's just kind of
that's fair.
Wasting time for no good reason.
I was also curious about if you are able to give or want to give a indication of the difficulty. Obviously they have very different mods. So maybe talk about without mods, but compared to Ubers, Elder Guardians, Katarina, what's sort of difficulty level? Where are they sitting?
They're meant to sit between the current Pinnacle and Uber Pinnacle, kind of ideally in the kind of halfway mark.
Okay.
Maybe, but that I would say that's kind of base. But honestly, those modifiers are absolutely freaking hectic. You get some combinations in here that's this is brutal. So it's very, very, very swingy.
Dice que los tier 17 maps tienen modificadores demasiado raros. Por lo tanto, a veces van a ser como que normal, pero difícil. Y a veces va a ser como que esto es brutal, esto es imposible.
Certainly, the easiest ones will be it's so hard to get. To quantify difficulty is very, very difficult. Anyway, they're meant to be effective. They're meant to be the penultimate difficulty, right? They're meant to be the second to top tier, but with the modifiers, they easily become harder in some ways, and often in ways that aren't I would say the Uber Pinnacle's hardness isn't difficulty from mods isn't the same as difficulty from mechanics.
Yeah,
difficulty from mechanics is more skill oriented. Your capacity for your brain to effectively be multi-threaded, paying attention to several things at a time, all of that, where mods can easily become you know, I might have to overcome this with gear, I might have to overcome with this build, or maybe I just have
Dice
to
que
have
los
higher
Ubers
reaction
para
time.
él es
There's a
algo
big
más de un
variety
desafío
there,
más
and it makes
de
it very,
tengo que
very
jugar
different
bien,
to
a
be able to
diferencia
quantify. So
de
like, you could
un
argue
mapa
it
de
makes it
17 es
more
como que,
difficult
ok,
in a
necesito
unfair
mejor
way
gear
on
para
some
hacer
axes,
esto,
and that is what makes it different.
y no tanto de
But
tengo que
it
jugar
certainly
bien.
is, yeah, like ideally without mods, things are extremely tactical, and with mods, things are taking in a little bit more like character build. And I would say personally, I obviously prefer tactical because then it's just straight up skill. Obviously, I want that. Probably most people want that. But I also like that you can build a character that can conquer this. You can build characters that specialize in this, and that are better as well. And you can ones that overcome certain mods, and that you can't necessarily run every map, which you could see as a downside. But you then go and say, well, I will either trade this away, or I will make something that allows me to conquer this, and I will overcome this challenge with my gear and with my character. These are cool things that appeal to different play styles and different players. Like, as
que lo
much
bueno
as
de
something
los
being
tier 17
skill-based is
es que
fun for me,
es algo distinto a los bosses, por lo tanto,
es
algo que va a llamar la atención a otro tipo de jugadores también.
Is also something that Path of Exile is just all about. So getting best of both worlds, ideally. But yeah, you know, you always have people very, very divided on this topic.
Y como tienes un boss también al final, y es como que un poquito de las dos cosas.
And were they affected by your Atlas at all?
Yeah, you can fully juice tier 17s for sure.
Sí, están afectados por tu Atlas.
The number of fragments is affected by quantity, so having the mods does mean you get more Uber Pinnacles, but you can't remove them. It's just a matter of you do want to juice as much as possible. Obviously not player quantity, it's just the standard like map mod difficulty and doing all that, but you can
Los
juice
mods
17s.
afectan la cantidad de fragmentos del pináculo que dropean, por lo tanto, mientras más difícil sea el mapa,
monsters, generally,
más va a dropear de Ubers.
More valuable signature. The packs are all generally higher, like effectiveness and value, and so they will drop more items.
Wow.
I think the mods are all a bit more rewarding as well. I could be wrong about that, but I think that is the case in terms of just quant rarity pack size. But you know, there's the downside of the div cards. They don't drop because they're new, and all the div cards drop in all the existing content. It's not like you're farming them for your divination cards and stuff like that. So you could argue they're less economically, you know, worthwhile in that regard, but they are better in almost every other regard.
O sea que los tier 17 maps van a ser parecido como unos baldos.
Yeah, that should work. Yes.
So you could do the favored maps.
That one should work, but I'm assuming in a world where not everyone has access to that infinitely.
That's fair.
But yeah,
that's fair. I was just clarifying.
Awesome, los escarabajos funcionan en los tier 17.
I'm running the sulfite nodes that give me damage and max rest in every tier 17.
Yeah, that is I mean, that is probably kind of what everyone's talking about. I would say like there's interesting things with that where like you look at that and you're kind of like, yeah, it's not ideal, because then it's that exact thing I'm talking about earlier where it's like you don't want people to feel like they have to do a thing, and like you don't have to, but like, you know, why wouldn't you?
Todo el mundo está hablando de esto, pero es que es muy obvio. Lo de pones a Nico, tienes ahora 105% más de daño, más de máximo resistance. Y bueno, tienes que gastar puntos, sí, pero
also like, you know, you could see
so yo lo hacía en los shrines.
Obviously, like a lot of the people in the office play the game and are like all talking like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and like you can consider that to be like, oh man, they've already the meta's figured out, you know, which isn't necessarily true. There's going to be heaps of development, but it's so easy to just hear that and be like, we want to change that. And I'm certainly of the like, obviously not. Like you don't release the patch notes, let everyone figure out what they're going to do, and then just maliciously like, see ya.
Dice,
like,
tenemos ganas de cambiarlo, pero no podemos esperar a que saquemos las patch notes, la gente descubra qué es lo que tiene que hacer y digamos maliciosamente, vamos a cambiarlo. Eso es lo que no queremos hacer tampoco. O sea, tenemos que tener una muy buena razón para cambiar algo.
The patch notes get posted. We're not finished development. Like we are going till Friday. That is how we do things. So things do change, but don't worry, your sulfite node is safe for now.
Dice que las cosas cambian, no hemos terminado el desarrollo, eso vamos hasta el viernes, pero no se preocupen por las nodas de sulfito, están a salvo.
How different? Actually, can we Spectre Brutus?
You should be able to Spectre all of the tier 17, well, pretty much all the tier 17 monsters. So there's like, what's it called? There's a freaking, what's the
Incarcerator? Wait.
There's all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know if Brutus is actually very good, but might be funny.
You froze as you were saying there, so we're not 100% sure what you said.
I can't remember. Well, depends where it cut, but either way, yes, you can spec to pretty much every tier 17 monster. Okay. You can spec to Brutus. There's like a purifier in there. You can spec to the purifier.
Puedes
his caster form kind of thing, and he's got some skills there.
Puedes cambiar todos los mobs del mapa de 17. Eso lo vimos en Montreal que subieron.
Monsters, like technically these specters are the new top in terms of at least life. Like they have the highest amount of life compared to every other monster. So if you're looking for just straight Detonate Dead, that's probably a...
Está diciendo directamente, bueno, si quieres vas a usar Detonate Dead, usa los espectros que vamos a poner porque son los que tienen más vida.
Not by much. It's not much more, but...
It doesn't need much.
So, I know.
Pero ¿se acuerdan el tipo que dijo que no importaba?
Hardest monsters in the game, and so that's what happens.
Yeah, I feel that.
XDD.
We'll bring that up more later.
Digo, DDDD.
I understand the issue there.
Yeah, cool.
Una vez que diga que no importa.
Yeah, the only thing I was gonna ask there is like, obviously some of the bosses. One of them's like Katarina and like the similar to the synthesis or heist robot and stuff. Like how
Lily
like,
ahora mismo se riéndose.
Completely whole new fights.
There's a lot of familiar mechanics. So Katarina, I'll talk briefly about that because we kind of showed it, but I won't give away too many mechanics. But
Dice que no quiere mostrar muchas
in the
mecánicas,
teaser,
pero va a
there
hablar
were
de
those three
Katarina.
entities kneeling in front of Katarina. Those are the three Abyss Liches. And so she's in a room and there's those, and she releases those over the fight, and each one you kill makes the fight harder going forward, and they come out in a random order, and so that one's pretty drastically changed, but like I won't go into any more detail than that because
las figuras que estaban arrodilladas son los Lich de Abyss, los bosses de Abyss, y que Katarina los va sacando durante la pelea, y cada uno que derrotas hace más difícil la pelea después, y salen en orden aleatorios. Holy!
Something you specifically wanted to talk about, which I really liked.
Holy!
Talk about this.
That's pretty cool.
El bingo. Yeah, I should bring that up as well because I don't remember half of them. Yeah. Let me just find it.
I have it open on stream too, if that helps.
I am just worried. Well, okay, I'll just bring it up so it's bigger.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to go through here.
Holy, there's a lot. So, I brought this up at some point, and I did a first pass based on instinct, and I actually brought it in MS Paint, and I'm like, I'm gonna just like red scribble through some of these, and you know, the ones I definitely am not doing, and then I did a second pass, and then I was like, you know, what can we actually do? And it's so easy to dismiss things that are like from some philosophy from back when in reality you can just talk about it and be like, okay, there's something we can do to solve the problem. So it's that whole give what they need, not
one click transfer, yes.
But I will tell
Dead recap, yes.
This is the best form of feedback that I could possibly receive.
Este es el mejor tipo de feedback que puedes recibir.
Essays, stop doing that. I don't read them. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not giving up my entire evening to read this thing that has a whole bunch of passive aggressive, or not even passive aggressive, just aggressiveness in it.
Yeah.
Just give me your... This is obviously what the community team is great for.
Este es el mejor tipo de feedback que pueden darme. Si quieren darme feedback de verdad, no hagan un post en Reddit que mide 50 páginas. Yo no voy a perder mi tarde leyendo algo que tiene un montón de cosas pasivo-agresivas ahí. Yo no voy a perder mi tiempo en eso.
Give me something, and I'm just like, sweet, let's figure it out, let's discuss it.
Tú me das esto, perfecto.
We either have good reason for not doing it, or
puedo tener una buena razón para hacerlo o para no hacerlo.
You know, we should reconsider these things. So,
sí, verdad.
10,000 people in chat are now writing bingo sheets. I hope you're aware of this.
Perfect. Like, yeah, actually perfect. Good. It's just, do understand, I will tactically pick the ones so that you can't actually complete the bingo. So, no, I won't do that, obviously. But,
dice que maravilloso de que estén muchas personas van a estar intentando hacer una bingo shit.
Bottom right one's done. Sweet. Perfect. And done before you posted it. So I beat you to it, except there was probably one of these in the past, so technically I didn't. Teleport shortcut. I was like, for a while, I was like, what the heck does that mean? but I'm assuming it means the portal scroll bind.
Yeah,
because that's
portal
what I
scroll
did.
bind. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So things on here like bigger currency stack sizes did that too. Okay, so we almost got the bingo on the right-hand side. We're missing 2. So combat dummy, I'll just talk about that real quick. So
combat dummy, okay, here we go. ¿Por qué no lo van a hacer? Let's see.
We've actually back and forth on this a bunch, but I don't like
There it is.
that. I like that people can be very creative with a build, and I know we're in the world of PoB, but I like that someone can like play a build by feel, and again isn't doing this whole like, because I can now quantify exactly what this build is doing, and if it is below this value, now it is clearly not worth playing. Like, I don't want to squash creativity, and I feel like the moment you have DPS meters and all of that stuff, it does do that.
Siento que en el momento que tenemos un medidor de DPS y estamos en el mundo del PoB, eso daña la creatividad. Creo que alguien se arma un build y que sienta el build y diga si vale la pena o no.
Because if you're the kind of person that cares about that, you're just going to use that, or you're going to follow someone's guide anyway, in which case they're going to tell you. So that one and look, don't get me wrong, I've been on the fence. I almost added that at some point. I've gone back and forth.
Yo estuve al final estuve muy cerca de agregar eso.
We had mega amounts of arguments about it, but I do believe it makes people less likely to kind of just try things that are fun as opposed to things that are optimized. And you could argue optimizing is fun, but that's not true for everyone. So
yo estoy en
I do
contra
have a
de
counterpoint there. Like, the main reason I would want it, and like ideally you just don't want this, right? But there are a lot of bugs. So sometimes the greatest thing with the target dummy is you can check if an interaction actually works. Like, I remember, for example, I was playing minion instability summon raging spirits, and I put on like they do more damage with low life, and I was like, this definitely doesn't work. Does it work? And people were like, no, it works. And then I messaged Bex at the time, and I was like, am I going crazy? Does this not work? And it was bugged at the time, which stuff like that is a lot more noticeable with an actual target dummy. So that is definitely a good thing.
I would say that having bugs is not a good excuse for having that is the wrong motivation.
But that's unavoidable.
Like, that's just us sucking, right? Like, we should just not have that be the case. And obviously, a lot of the reason why people want it is because the stuff isn't as observable in terms of like figuring out exactly what your DPS is.
No
like,
solamente
the character stat sheet isn't giving enough information, especially when
quiero
it
ponerle
comes to
pausa
like
para dar mi opinión, man.
And that is all stuff we need to just make better. I know PoE 2 is taking mega strides right now to get that stuff accurate. Like, the numbers you see is what you get. And we probably, once that is in a good place, I could see a world where we do an update on PoE 1 for that to make sure it's done the same. But anyway, it's easy to talk about a single point forever, so we can either move on.
Dice que podemos hablar de esto todo el tiempo o podemos cambiar otra cosa. O sea, básicamente es algo que no le gusta, pues siente que va a afectar la creatividad de las personas y aparte de eso, siente que va a abrir más puertas a que todo el mundo diga que tal cosa es lo mejor y no pruebe más nada. Que tiene que ver con la creatividad también, pero bueno.
We're definitely doing it in PoE 2, so I don't see a reason why we can't do that in PoE 1.
Okay.
I would say that's on the like probable list going forward. Fragment stash in map device. I don't know if I don't want the fragment stash there, because then we're getting even into more. You have to buy it, but kind of what you want is an additional kind of inventory accessible there, which I do see being quite a strong. There's probably after this league I could see, or during this league I could see that being something that we start to really think about and develop, because.
Dice que no quiere poner la fragment stash tab.
Like a little
I can see that being a problem. Yeah, I mean, we can have like a little map device rucksack, not a character one. But...
ponerla en el map device. Dice que no quiere la fragmentar, pues eso te va a obligar más a comprarla. Pero tal vez tener un pequeño inventario ahí para algo sería bueno.
That's certainly been a hot topic internally of late, and we've been back and forthing on that. I'd say you got flip of a coin as to whether or not that's going to make it in soon. So,
Fuck, no escuché la que dijo ahorita.
We'll see.
¿Cuál dijo?
I'm not personally against that one. I am a little bit with inventory. I don't want that feature to bloat out into like item filter territory where you've got millions of options and customizing of how it works. So like, I would be okay with like a basic, this is how it, like, it just, here's the sorting algorithm, you're given what you're given, and like,
Ya, lo de acomodar el inventario, el botón.
You can bring up some menu and get all into that.
El botón se subnormal y cambia.
Again, part of this adding complexity where it isn't really needed. And I know a lot of people are going to ask for that. So even if that feature does happen, we're not going to get into that. So just don't expect it.
Cool.
Let's see. Larger pickup radius. Well, I've given my opinion on that. I am kind of keen.
Large pickup radius dice que quiere que sea un poquito más grande.
It's just a matter of getting it right before we do it.
Pero quieren asegurarse de cuál es el correcto.
I would even not be surprised if 325 can get something there.
No me sorprendería si la 325 tiene algo ahí.
Color-coded affixes. Are you talking on items or are you talking under monster affixes?
So I've only brought this up as a point about maps, but I mean, I could see people wanting them on items too, like +1 gems and stuff like that.
Color-coded se refiere a que si reflect que esté en rojo, por ejemplo, en
someone
mapas.
did ask me about it, and I was kind of like, look, try it out, but I don't want it to like look... It can certainly look real bad and look cheap, and you could argue, well, I don't care how it looks, I just care how if I get the information. I agree that is like ultimately the importance, but
dice
on the other hand,
Mark
I'd like to try and find a way that doesn't compromise it to make it
quiere
just look like
que se vea de una forma que no se vea estúpida, pero dice que es un problema que entiende.
Your classic just like, well, here's a rainbow of stuff on the item, and you're like, oh, what the? It can just make items feel real inelegant, and that's the only real hesitancy from me. But I understand why people want it. Possibly. Well, this is...
Símbolos.
It is an option. It might result in the same thing of, again, now you look at an item. That I worry, you look at an item and the item now looks more complex than it really is, and our items aren't exactly simple. So I worry that...
Un símbolo es un ítem puede hacer que se vean más complejos, y él sabe que los ítems no son simples como tal, pero que se vean...
The people who would have that off by default, the people who it's most useful for, and then...
Las personas que más lo necesiten puede que lo tengan desactivado por defecto, mientras que las personas que más lo necesiten lo van a tener activo por defecto. Que no lo necesiten lo van a tener activo por defecto.
Itemized Ashling Slam. Well, we've done that, but we also took one away, which I know has been a point of controversy.
I did want to talk about that too.
Para hablar de la Chaos Bailing Orb.
You did mention it during the Ziggy podcast or like the Q&A at the end, but obviously I've seen so much talk about it, and I think I'll get lynched for not asking, but so many people were wondering if we could have both.
¿Puedo tener ambas?
I would... Well, yeah, my personal thing is still I would like to remove crafting bloat where possible, where it is not like kind of super mainstream, as in like it's coming from a league or beyond.
Chaos Bailing Orb y el Slab de Aisling.
But I also don't want to just infinitely add crafting things to the game and never be able to take stuff away, because it is, I'd say, one of the most fearful things about PoE and players coming into the game.
Una cosa que más me mide de Path of Exile es aprender a
craftear. I think that ultimately, yes, you could argue the passive tree and whatnot, but I think the item crafting is probably one of the more daunting things.
Sí, estoy de acuerdo con eso.
Because it is there are so many different things and you don't know what to really do, and it can be very, very scary. I mean, I know this is like a low... You could argue, it's just one item, we're not talking about a system here. But on the other hand, like any space or design space I can clear to do something else and do it differently and better, I do want to take those opportunities. And design space is valuable.
Catarina, en lugar de copiar uno, te copia de 1 a 3. Listo, todo el mundo feliz.
An interesting one, like,
porque el tema es que te vas a quedar con menos Bailet Orbs. Ese es el tema.
More design space for us to use.
Porque el Slab de Aisling es objetivamente mejor que el otro.
It adds complexity. Yeah. Of course it does. But we still have to add content, and a game at this point, like, you can't just stop adding content. And so, yeah, taking these opportunities to remove things so that we can reevaluate that design space and add something new is a huge victory for us.
Dice que esta oportunidad de quitar algo para después agregar otra cosa ahí es valioso.
Because the delayed reaction of when the thing then gets added in its place doesn't happen at the exact same time. So it happens later. So my main point is I want people to understand the value of creating a gap, and creating a gap, letting people then adapt to the gap not being there to then add something back that's even better is very valuable when it comes to like game design and game development, unless you just want to actually bloat the features of your game to the point of absolute ridiculousness, which you could argue PoE is getting there. And so like we're certainly in an era where adding stuff can be quite dangerous, because when you go look at like you want new players. You can't just not bring in new players. That's the death of a game, right?
Dice, quieres nuevos jugadores, pero cada vez que vas a traer a alguien nuevo tienes más y más cosas que explicar.
And so when the number one problem with Path of Exile is complexity, when it comes to new players starting the game, should be that it is very important to us, the players, to everyone, that we are taking opportunities to remove complexity from the game, so we can add stuff in its place instead of just infinitely increasing the amount of content. Right. I know that's like hard to connect those two dots between what the heck it's just a veiled orb to
Básicamente, si sacan algo, lo van a reemplazar con otra cosa. Puede que no sea el momento, puede que sea después. Te tradeo una Engineering Orb por una Chaos Veiled Orb.
We already have a plan for Engineer's Orb.
Okay.
So.
Tenemos un plan para la Engineering Orb.
We were actually going to do it in this patch, but it kind of got cut.
Lo íbamos a hacer en este patch, pero...
We ran out of time. But yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay. Right.
I know we've been going for ages, and I'll just point out that it might just be at the end of this bingo. We can probably just conclude there, just because otherwise we're going to go forever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's all right on your end.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wasn't planning on going over 2 hours. I don't know how you feel about a quick break, because I wasn't planning to go this long.
We could, or it depends if you want to hold out for the rest of the bingo, and then we can just call it there. There's probably the amount of work piling up for me. And
okay, right.
Up to you, really.
Zizaran, ser un buen host. Mark ya se quiere ir.
It just depends how much more longer you're willing to go, because there's a lot of things we wanted to talk about.
Zizaran
we're probably just not going to get through it all, I'd say. So I reckon let's just finish the bingo and move on.
Mark es demasiado amable para decir de que se quiere ir ya.
We no break. We just keep going.
Y Zizaran está forzándolo.
Yep.
Lo tiene secuestrado, sí.
Well, larger inventory space. You've heard my debates on that one, especially with rucksack.
Inventario más grande no le agrada.
Our internal battles. I like inventory pressure. You could argue. Most people are not going to argue this, but you could argue there's too many items dropping, and that's the main problem. And more so, there's too many items that you feel like you need to pick up. Like, there's that huge eternal, like, why are we not reducing the amount of items and making them higher quality? And I still want to achieve that, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Quieren reducir la cantidad de ítems que dropean, pero que sean de mejor calidad.
Another one of those things I was talking about earlier, where if you remove all the scarabs, or you mess up all the scarabs, the game's dead, right? Because the end game's now dead, right? If you mess that up badly, if you mess up the item system, it's also just GG, right? Like, it is not the kind of thing you can get
Chris.
Wrong. Yeah. So I definitely still want to do the whole, like, you shouldn't need to by day 2 be. I know I'm talking about in-game people, but you shouldn't by day 2 have to be filtering out 99% of item drops and all of that. It's just. It's ridiculous. Like,
día 2 no deberías estar filtrando el 99% de los items que caen.
Is obviously you still always will filter items. I want it to be that a filter's purpose is to format items, but not necessarily. And I'm not saying I'm going to change it. I'm not going to make it that you can't hide items and all that. That's not the thing. But I don't want it to be that you're just filtering so much. But I love the formatting. I like being able to change to make certain things look more important than others and change the sizes and all of that. That's absolutely great. But I don't think you should have to need to do this. And so, yeah, I kind of just want to have less items that are more impactful and thus reduce the kind of need for the whole inventory space to always feel larger.
Que en este bingo no hay un
I do believe that is an interesting
filtro dentro del fucking juego,
man. You can't just take everything you want always. I do think that you need that. I know it's similar to, like, sockets, where people perceive socket pressure as bad. And socket pressure is more that it's imbalanced between certain builds, but socket pressure is good. Like, you shouldn't just be able to have every single skill in the entire game equipped all at once. Not that that's necessarily beneficial. Pressures and limits are good. It means you have to make different decisions, and you have constraints, and you have to actually think about it. And that these are good things that make the game.
Está hablando de la presión y los límites son buenos para el juego.
A thing that's like background processing.
Porque eso es lo que te obliga a tomar decisiones distintas.
After driving for so long, don't even remember. You don't remember the drive because it just becomes this kind of. I don't know if this is a good comparison, by the way, but it's just something that came to mind. I don't remember what the hell happened when I drove in this morning, because nothing eventful happened. right? And you want these events to be happening that are actually triggering emotional responses and are causing you to make decisions, not subconsciously, but actually consciously. Otherwise, again, you're not playing a game. You're just like going through some background processing on some things. You should engage, you should play, you should do actions and do things that are meaningful and not just like...
Esto es algo más filosófico, pero dice que como que quiere que las acciones en Path of Exile sean significativas al punto en el que las cosas que estés haciendo importen. Si tú no te acuerdas lo que hiciste hace un rato en Path of Exile, esa acción no importaba porque no te estás acordando. Es como viajar de tu casa al trabajo. Te olvidaste siquiera lo que pasó en el camino porque no era algo importante. O sea, en el juego tenemos la opción de eliminar las cosas que no sean importantes y que hacer que las cosas tengan algún tipo de peso, pero positivo. Y que por eso queremos eso así y por eso los filtros son necesarios. Pero quisiéramos que cayeran menos basura.
I'm generally against things that mean that you're not actually looking at the game world, looking at your character, deciding what's going on around you. And I know that is very, very hard to achieve with the level of ruckus that goes on towards the high end game. But at least you've chosen to do that, and you're putting more effort into running maps and configuring maps and itemization and gear before you're doing that. And it's easy to ask for that to be the default all the time. And I think that would actually just destroy the game. I don't think there would be, I don't consider that to be fun if that is the norm always. Earning it, perfectly good. So anyway, a bit of a rant there and a bit tangential, but...
They're pretty enjoyable to listen to. I like it. And I agree, like choices are important. What's the next one?
Death recap. So
Death recap. Here we go.
Jonathan's talked about this in PoE 2 a little bit, and we definitely want to do it. I've been trying to figure out how to do it lately, and I think the easiest we can do, and I'm curious if this is enough, because I know everyone's going to want like exactly what skill and exactly this and this. Well, most people actually might want a frame-by-frame replay with logging and all that. And like, there is an easier solution, which is that we probably can do something like either time or the last time you were on full life, and by that I mean ignoring reservation, life, mana, like energy shield, like you're full on resources. What damage you took from what monster, and at the point of death, what debuffs you had on you. But we can't have like, here's how much the debuff was doing, and we can't be like,
la última vez que estabas en full HP, full energy, etc. ¿Y qué debuff, qué daño qué fue lo que más daño te hizo en ese momento? ¿Y qué debuff tenías cuando moriste?
That's pretty huge.
And then I guess on the death screen, you'd have something you can pop open. It would have effectively a grid by monsters and by like damage types probably, and then a list of like you were affected by this debuffs when you died. I would say that is like within reason. But then, yeah, you obviously get the whole, like... even then, that has complexities, because we have the concept of a daemon, which is effectively an environment hazard, or like a lot of the Arch Nemesis mods, and well, now just rare monster mods, but, you know, the whole lightning storm and all that. That's technically not the rare monster doing the damage. That's just like some invisible other monster. So we're going to have to go through and name all of those correctly so that they appear as like lightning storm modifier and stuff like that we're going to have to do. And it'll get some weird inconsistencies. But I think you'll get kind of 90 to 95% of what you want. And that might just be enough.
Tal vez ese es como el 90-95% de lo que quieres. A mí me parece que del Death Recap, el que me parece más lindo de todos y que tiene suficiente es el que yo he visto en Dota.
And I took some damage, but
te salen lo que recibiste daño, cuánto daño en este tiempo.
That did most of the damage and stuff like that. And there are ways.
Y la suma total de lo que recibiste, por supuesto.
It's just been complex, and I don't think
en 3 segundos te enteras exactamente de lo que te pasó.
To not get it 90% of the way there right now.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people at this point will take anything. We're very excited for that.
Tal vez eso no se pueda aplicar al 100% acá porque Dota es más sencillo.
No, we're going down. I was doing some weird pathing.
Respecto a Path of Exile,
master mission selection. Well, not a problem anymore.
Yeah,
it's gone. Minimap mechanic icons. I have 2 states of minds about this one, but mostly, I mean, like we got it added for strong boxes. Someone suggested it in-house.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, of course, let's add it. But again, it goes back to that, like,
los iconos
I don't
de
want the game
las
to be, I
mecánicas.
look at a minimap and I play off the minimap. Obviously, that's very important right now. But I would rather...
No, por
so
favor,
PoE 2
okay.
does a thing that I think is very, very good, which is that minimap icons do not appear until they are within your fog of war radius. And so right now, there's this thing where area transitions have like a radius of 250 units, which is just freaking megalithic, right? 25 meters or whatever. And they just appear, and you're like, oh, now I know where I'm navigating. Whereas in PoE 2, you have your fog of war, which is effectively your screen, and you actually have to see the object before it appears on the minimap. And I think this is very, very, very good. I think that the way it has changed how you play is hugely wins. I'm all for having more stuff on the minimap. Well, I don't actually know how much more stuff needs to be there, because I will explain, I don't like monsters on the minimap.
Okay.
Because I don't want you to just position the monster on the edge of your screen and then just shoot off screen and hit it. And so you knowing it's exact, you can kind of do that already, I understand.
Mark quiere más cosas en el minimapa, pero no quiere monstruos en el minimapa, por ejemplo.
In most cases, I am actually kind of against having it that monsters are on the minimap. Like, I just don't think that it, again, I want you to look at your screen and I see the monster and know it's there. And
quiero que mires a la pantalla y que sepas el monstruo está ahí.
Off-screening you, well, that's us sucking. So let's
si un monstruo te está pegando de fuera de la pantalla, eso somos nosotros que estamos apestando, estamos haciéndolo mal.
We should fix it. Now, one thing that will solve this, which is another one on here, it's the next one, not really, it's skipping, is the boss health bar. I want to do static life bars very, very badly.
La barra de...
I think it is one of the best features in PoE 2.
It's very nice.
La barra estática de vida para los monstruos. Quiero hacerlo.
Here's the thing, you will know when a boss is nearby because the static life bar in theory should appear.
Yeah.
And I want that to be a very good signaling and do not have to use the minimap for it.
Now, to be fair, that was one of my favorite features of Metamorph, was actually seeing the monster packs. Like, that was really enjoyable.
Well, I can see why it is considered useful, but I mean, I see people arguing about this a little bit, but again, it's that whole, I want you to look at the monsters. I want you to look at
quiere que la barra de vida del boss se vea cuando estés en el radio del boss. De esa forma también sabes que el boss está ahí.
Burrow and stuff. Like, I always found that really annoying, like the sand skitters and stuff like that. Like, that was so nice in Metamorph.
Well, okay, in the context of Metamorph, because you are really promoting, you want to collect all the organs, that's a very different story. But like a random, I don't even know what, but like, let's say your random packs that are replaced by map bosses, like, I don't think those need to have mini-map icons, right? Like, why would they? You just come across it or you don't. It's not needed to complete an objective, so to speak.
Right.
Whereas, like, on Metamorph, it's kind of like, if you miss one of those, you could spend the next 10 minutes searching for monsters and it'll be like, my God, this is so frustrating. Because you don't want to then do your Metamorph encounter until you've found them all. So
I see that.
I would say they're different contexts for sure, but there might be some contexts that deserve it that I am not thinking about. Like, I don't want to just be like, no, never in any. It is contextual, and there possibly are. But again, at least for...
Está hablando básicamente de que debería ir en un minimapa y que no debería ir en un minimapa. Dice, por ejemplo, si tienes un pack de mobs que se reemplazaron por bosses, por un sexto o algo así, eso no debería estar en el minimapa. O sea, o lo ves o no lo ves.
It's not worth doing any of them.
Oh, okay.
But I think I just need to get away from that and start doing it in categories. So, for example, we could do anything that's in a fixed arena is easier. But like, the trouble I have... Okay, you go city square map, you got twinned map bosses, you've got Maven where she spawns 2 extra bosses. I mean, how am I displaying 8 life bars?
Right.
And so the question is it the 3 closest? And then at what point is it useful?
Yeah,
like,
the same for the fear.
You know,
I get that.
The UI is going to turn into a disaster. And
okay. Dice que, okay, ¿qué hacemos
have to figure that out anyway, because
por ejemplo,
I don't want to have it that you can't have a decent amount of
¿qué pasa
bosses
si estás
in PoE 2,
en una arena?
You know, you could argue
y tienes Maven duplica los bosses y ese tipo de cosas. Tienes 8 bosses ahora. ¿Cómo hago? ¿Te pongo 8 barras? O vas al Fear, por ejemplo, que hago, te muestro toda la vida de todos los bosses.
Damaged, or it could be that when one damages you, it overrides one that hasn't damaged you. But I think the simplest is I just try the 3 closest, or the X, however many closest, and then we see where that goes, because it's still better than nothing, I would say.
Especially for like, just even if all we got it for was like the pinnacle bosses, like the Ubers and those, that would make a big difference already, like Cyrus, etc.
Es verdad, o sea, si los pones nada más para los bosses del pináculo sería genial.
Bars, it allows us to do a lot more stuff with like the debuff
Eso es un buen
icons
punto, o
underneath
sea, yo estoy
them
feliz
and
nada
all
más
that
con
stuff,
los,
and that's
con los
so
Ubers.
useful information.
Yeah.
Not all debuffs,
Ubers de
but
los
the
normales, o
important ones
sea,
that matter, which you
ver,
can see
ver cuánta vida
PO2
tiene el
getting a lot
Elder,
of.
el Shaper,
And,
cuánta vida tiene
I think
Zizaran
that
Entrevista, cuánta vida
is-
tiene
and so that's
Sirius,
where
sería
I kind of
fantástico.
want them everywhere. But yeah, I was
Súper
gonna
feliz
start
con
with like
eso.
Ubers, Pinnacles,
Y me
and
encanta
then
de que
work
Neon
down
esté
to, like,
100% a
axe
bordo de
bosses,
esto, solo
and
está
then,
pensando en la
you
mejor
know,
forma de
go from
hacerlo.
there and start getting the more fundamental ones. But it's actually kind of easy to do the campaign because you don't have so many bosses all at once.
Yeah.
It's when you then, should a breach boss have it? Should a Legion general have it?
Yeah.
Should a, like, I don't really know these answers, and then it's like, oh, all of a sudden it's not just uniques. Like, should a Rogue Exile have it? Well, probably not, right?
Definitely
What's
less a
the
priority
point?
on those. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Está hablando de por lo menos tal vez empezar con algunos, ir agregándolos a medida que que vayan como que consiguiendo la mejor forma de hacerlo, ¿no? Pero es interesante esto.
Which will help and then alleviate the need for minimap icons.
A nivel de desarrollo es muy cool escuchar estas cosas. Pero lo que nos importa a nosotros como jugadores es que quiere poner boss bards y es algo importante para él. Así que, nice.
Okay, what's next? Well, more tab affinities.
¿Más affinities de tabs?
I think I'm just at a no with that one. So the hard rule is here we do not want everything to have an affinity.
No quieren que todo tenga una
and the
afinidad.
only things left really are equipment, kind of jewels.
Lo único que queda son casi joyas,
We've
equipamiento.
kind of run out of like room to add more there. We do not want to do that. Every single thing is just automated.
No queremos que cada cosa sea automática.
I don't know if this is in here, but it's in the same kind of category as there. One-click transfer inventory to stash.
Yeah.
One-click transfer.
There have been many arguments of item weight, and it is a very nebulous concept, and whether or not it matters and all that.
Mucha discusión acerca de
lines that we certainly do not
el
want
peso
to
del ítem
even
y
at
todo.
this point, where I am kind of okay with the sorting your stash.
Estoy bien
I
con
don't
que
think that
se
actually demeans weight in a way that is substantial.
Reacomode el stash.
And everyone is subjective. Everyone has their opinion on how much an item should weigh and what that is. And a lot of people think that they should be weightless. But again, we want it to be that you are engaging with these things. You're looking at these things. You are making conscious decisions about these things. And I understood you putting them into a clicking them into a quad tab. You still later have to sort them out, so you can delay when you're dealing with the weight currently, but at least the weight isn't necessarily removed.
Okay.
But mass manipulation of items all at once on non-fungible, so non-stackables, non-currency, etc. Is just a line that we're not currently willing to cross.
No quiere cruzar la línea de manipular de manera masiva ítems que no sean currency.
You don't want it to be an idle game.
And then we're pretty much at the point where the only affinities that aren't there are equipment. I'm pretty sure, right? Like maybe missing. There may be some very select
tattoos, incubators.
Incubator. Because there's a thing there for asking for an incubator stash tab. I would rather, by the way, just have it that there are more less incubators that are more powerful, because like there is a
lot of bad ones.
There is a lot right now that drop. It kind of gets a little bit out of control.
Yeah.
Sí, está diciendo de que por los incubadores, en lugar de darle una afinidad, preferiría borrar algunos incubadores y dejarlos poderosos. Porque si algo cool, como que conseguí, que bien, conseguí lo bueno, pero seamos sinceros, ¿quién hace un incubador de yo qué sé, de los talismanes?
What's the persist rare mob? Well, I'm assuming the persist rare mob is you effectively want some sort of static life bar for rare monsters.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already talking about having issues with space for that. Like you can get rares and bosses in the same space. It comes down to the same issue, honestly. And then like you can get 10 rares at once. And is it the last one you damage?
Y esto dice que es lo mismo,
chaining and shit's
que es tema de espacio.
You're not really controlling which one. So it's the same real problem. Reroll Uber fragments. Well, I guess we solved the one that was contextual to this, and we have introduced a new need for someone to add this to the next bingo through the Uber Pinnacle ones. Because of the way we chose to do the target farming instead of having the reroll.
Yeah,
so that you can bias towards farming certain ones instead of needing to reroll.
Fragments,
it might be that
tenemos
something
uno.
like that is needed later, but again, I don't want it to be that in order to do all the boss content, you have to engage with Harvest. I think that if we wanted to do that, I'll do it through some core system or a recipe as opposed to that. We talked about the one above and the one above.
Yeah.
So passive tree planner.
Okay.
Yeah, because it looked like we were going to get that at one point.
Yeah, okay. What I want to be able
Básicamente
to do
incluir
is
una
the
especie de
basic
PoE dentro del
functionality
juego.
of import someone's tree, if you choose, or just forward plan your own, and that's it. I don't want to try and do what PoB is doing, because that is just going to do it better. And it's also
Tiene 100% la razón en esto.
That screen
Él dice tal vez
the most beyond complicated thing you've ever seen ever. But you should certainly be able to just be like, I'm going to import someone's tree, and it's going to like show the layout of that and like the.
Él dice, voy a importar el árbol de alguien y me va a decir por dónde tengo que ir.
On yours, and
Eso
like,
está
that's
bueno.
it, really. I think doing that is a good step in the right direction, and then that's probably
bueno.
as far as we need to go with that
Y eso
one.
es tal vez lo más lejos que tenemos que llegar.
And so that's certainly currently on the planned list, and it might be 325. It really, again, we're going to have to pick our battles for this one. So it's on my list of.
Están hablando ahora de las cosas que la gente quiere y qué cosas pueden ir para una siguiente expansión, una siguiente liga.
Stash tabs and icons. As in, you want to not, I guess that's like a not wanting to pay for the colored stash tabs. So you want them on the default ones. I'm assuming. I don't really know. Icons is an interesting idea, of course, because you want to be like, this is where my blah goes and my blah goes. There's probably a room to do
Iconos para las stash tabs.
That. Obviously, the premium ones come with it, but you want to, I guess,
no. They want colored folders and icons on the folders.
Oh.
En la carpeta quieren iconos y colorcitos en el folder.
I'll look into that. I'll see. I'm not entirely familiar with what state that's in, to be honest.
Dice que no saben en qué estado está eso, pero como que...
I'll just look into... I'll look into that. Well, that's not appealing. I would... Yeah, that's...
Awesome.
Sí, dice como que eso no es algo malo, simplemente que no saben cómo está ahorita, pero...
Because you want to get that like vibrant, this stash is valuable.
Yeah,
this folder is valuable.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sí, o sea, dice que no tiene problema con eso. Pero tiene que ver cómo está, para qué tan cuesta hacerlo.
Incubator stash tab, we kind of talked about, like, it's a problem with too many incubators right now, I'd say. Like, it just shouldn't be necessary for you to need that. And, like, I would hate to have to sell that. Like, you shouldn't have to pay for that. Yes, it's not essential for a league, so by all rules, if we were to have one, you'd have to pay for it, and so it should just be we solve that problem the proper way.
Okay. Dice que Incubator, en lugar de poner un...
node, there's just some small gameplay things I need to work around, but we may as well do that. That one's pretty trivial at the end of the day. I mean, you're just saving that extra slightly delayed click. But
nice. Te ahorras un click, eso es todo.
So halving the clicks matters, so...
That does.
V to corrupt essence. Well, V to corrupt essence. I'm not okay with the V, but I am okay with the button. I don't like how many things conflict with V, and it gets a little bit scary when you got too many of them, and it's unclear now what V will do in some situations.
Shortcut para corromper una esencia o para corromper una strongbox. That's pretty good.
Yeah. But I do want the button. So yeah, we're going to put like a little remnant of corruption symbol next to the essences, and if you have one in your inventory, it appears, and you can just click it. So at least saves the open inventory. I am
en el clic izquierdo parece que va a funcionar movernos.
I am trying to get away from... I know technically you can clear around an essence, take a moment, open your inventory, do it, which means it's technically not the same.
Creo que es bastante importante.
Pero
si fuera de eso, creo que puedes poner otra cosa ahí, pero no va a ser nada instantáneo.
Awesome.
Eso es todo.
Then again, strong boxes are fundamentally kind of, that is what they kind of entail.
Qué horrible es XTV.
And then I don't like...
I think that's a bit different, though. We don't see that many people complain about strong boxes either.
Yeah, and a lot of the main thing there is because you can kind of get them to just be rare by default and stuff like that, and so you don't have to feel like you alch them. But also alching them is not even necessarily yielding you an extra alch in terms of rewards. It is worth noting that there are scarab modifiers on strong boxes now, so like you'll get scarabs through that means as opposed to strictly on the operatives box.
Yeah,
I think we actually removed the operatives box and moved all the mods to everything else. But yeah, I don't feel like that one's necessary personally either, but the essence thing is certainly more annoying for sure. The remnant.
El de essence es molesto.
Anyway, that's the whole set of those. So yeah, there's a good handful of them that should be looking like a 325 feature.
Pero eso me parece que va a ser algo para
these are things, again, I just want to remind, like, we wouldn't have budged on this a year ago, even 6 months ago necessarily, and you know, we are certainly taking a slightly different stance, and especially PoE 2 is the thing causing us to do all of that.
Dice que hace 6 meses, hace un año, mucho de esto simplemente no lo habíamos considerado, pero gracias a Path of Exile 2 estamos cambiando muchas cosas.
Becoming the dinosaurs, as we like to say.
Así que
I have a few quickfire things I can ask you about as well that people are very curious about. Warcries, can we use 2 of them, like automating?
No. I believe all the descriptions have been updated to be more clear as well, but...
No podemos tener 2 Warcries a la vez.
No, because it's the same as call to arms, so they all share a cooldown. If you can only put one with call to arms, and then it goes off. And I think it's probably the first one in the sockets is my guess, but putting 2 is pointless.
Right. Okay. Melee and like, for example, feeling forced to use like the ancestral totems, also problems with socket pressure.
Agreed. Very hard to solve. I've been trying to think about this for a long time. I'm going to raise it's on my 325. It's a tier 1 feature on my 325 list of things I want to get sorted. That doesn't mean it's happening, but like it certainly means I'm taking it seriously. And I don't just mean the totems. Like you could argue nerf the totems, buff everything else. There are more problems than that. And
está hablando de los totems y los slots.
Hard one to get right. Everyone has so many different opinions of what's wrong with it. And like it's scary. There is some stuff we can do, and we should take small strides instead of the right ones. But I just need to make sure that instead of the big strides, just because they're probably right. But like we built PoE 2 to fix melee. You know what I mean? Like it is so hard to actually. It depends what you mean,
complicado resolverte los totems y nosotros construimos Path of Exile 2 para acomodar el melee.
Combat. You can't have that in a game that is this fast. It's just not possible.
No puedes tener
because it's too fast.
El combate que mejora el sistema en un juego que va así de rápido como el nuestro.
Well,
it's just not.
Grand Slam Impaler honestly did feel really good even in a fast game, to be fair.
Right, but okay, so that's where you come down to like, we add builds that promote playing slower.
Yeah.
But again, it depends what you're after and what you mean, because a lot of people just mean like, the problem with melee is the totems, and some people's problem with melee is just that, I don't know, it could just be a numerical balance problem simply, and other people's is just the feel and clunkiness, and there's so many. So I want to make sure I definitely understand the problems.
Quiero entender bien el problema para...
And then go from there and see how we can. But I do think it needs something pretty grand to really shake that up.
Tienes que ver el gameplay de totems de Path of Exile 2, se ve muy cool.
I don't want to band-aid the problem, and I don't want to just push it down the line by 3 months again and again and again. I want to find something that is just much better overall. And I don't know what that is yet, but I acknowledge the problem for sure. A lot of people here do. And obviously, just to clarify, the solution to it is not to slow down the game. It's to create reasons you might... one way could be to create more motivations as to why you might want to play with less attack speed and stuff to make it feel more visceral. But like that's still at the end of the day your choice, and we're not taking away from that. It's just an option.
Awesome. Another thing, I've seen so many people asking about it as well in chat. Corpse skills been very strong for very long.
Los skills de cuerpo son muy fuertes por mucho tiempo. Por motivos nerfeen DD.
I mean, the simple thing is, yes, they probably need a change. The reason why that the reason why some of these things don't shift in the meta as much as other things is because
esto está ligado con otros sistemas de mierda, entonces no pueden. Esa es la razón.
Ultimately, it comes down to the same problem of here's all the changes we feel like we need to make, and here's the ones we actually have the time to make. It's mostly resourcing, I would say, that is the main issue. There are not many people who are very good at actually assessing what to change and how to change it.
Yeah.
So you can't give it to anyone. And sometimes it's like, okay, can I just fix this with numbers, or does this need something a bit more grand, like a redesign, or does this need a system change? You need someone who's good at
básicamente necesitan más recursos para cambiar cosas, más cantidad de cosas. Eso es todo.
Well, in a way that again isn't just band-aiding things or playing this cat and mouse game of it's slightly nerfed, then something else gets slightly nerfed and buffed, and like doing that is fine, but doing that, ideally you design a system around that doesn't achieve that, require that to be necessary. Right. But yes, sometimes it is still the right answer to band-aid until we do that. Mm-hmm. So I would just say that it is probably just a matter of it's been missed on time.
Sí, probablemente es algo que simplemente se les quedaron sin tiempo, pero porque vale la pena ponerle una bandita, como nerfearlo ligeramente antes de acomodarlo definitivamente.
I'm looking at bigger problems, grander scale. So, but look, if it's an issue, if we get it on the list early, we can get ahead of things. So, sure.
Cool. And then I guess as a final thing, which we were not going to cover even half of everything we planned out, but you wanted to mention a few teasers for things that could be possible for the next gauntlet.
teasers para el Gauntlet.
Yeah, well, you and I had a brief discussion, but again, like the main issue we've had, honestly, is that the sooner I know, the more I can do. Because I can work that around. I can do, if I like the ideas enough, I'll do it in my free time. Like I'll just go home and do it, right? Instead of playing one night, I will just do stuff there one night because it's fun. So yeah, I mean, we discussed
Son
doing,
bullshit para hacer el siguiente Gauntlet más difícil.
Having it so that for the Gauntlet, we customize like the designs, what the skills of the bosses do, and so you get like the different version of the Exarch, maybe his like bullet hell works differently, you're adding different skills and stuff like that. Like we may as well, like it's pretty easy to do. So doing a whole new animation on the creature is expensive. That's a new animation, that's a new...
Hacer una nueva animación es difícil, pero hacer que cambie la dirección del bullet hell, por ejemplo.
Heaps of stuff like that. But reusing existing effects, reusing existing animation. So like changing the shape, the pattern of a bullet hell, trivial.
Cambiar el patrón de un bullet hell, dice que es bastante trivial.
Changing how minions are spawned, trivial. Things like,
uy, que vaya que sin círculo. Oh my god.
Barrage of mortars. You could certainly have a thing where they impact the ground, then they sit there, or they maybe turn into proximity mines, or they turn into volatiles, or they, after a delay, will do the mortar again and delay again. And so, like, you could even have it that they have a 20% chance that every single time they hit the ground, then for the rest of the fight, they will every X seconds like bounce again, targeting you every time.
Enfermo.
So, like, as you get more and more of that skill use,
el siguiente Gauntlet va a estar divertido de ver, no de jugar, pero de ver va a estar divertido. O sea,
that's just a random
vamos a ver cómo Ben completa el siguiente Gauntlet.
That stuff's trivial to do, but then we're talking about developing for the Gauntlet instead of developing for the whole game, and obviously that can be controversial, and that's why I'm talking about getting in early and spending bonus time to kind of do that, because it's still cool, it's still fun, people love that, people watch it, and like, yeah, I mean, we can do it. And there's the other thing is like, we might be able to then find a way to integrate that stuff into core games somehow, like some sort of alternate way of doing the fight. Something that you've mentioned in the past is like having modifiers that specifically manipulate how boss skills work, things like that can be things that we could do.
Tal vez si es algo que se ve cool en el Gauntlet, tal vez podemos integrar en el juego.
Get their hands on. So
I did see somebody was asking as well, do you play the Gauntlet ever?
¿Has jugado el Gauntlet alguna vez?
Generally not, because it's generally running at the point in time where I'm at like peak level busy.
Yeah.
Dice porque generalmente está en el momento en el que no puedo, estoy demasiado ocupado.
If I don't get to do it, like at the start of a league, obviously a lot of my time is towards designing the next league, figuring out exactly what we're doing, figuring out exactly all of this stuff, like discussion upon discussion. But I generally go back to 40 hours a week, and I generally get to play. But
dice que al inicio de una liga tengo como 40 horas de trabajo y puedo volver a jugar.
I certainly, as like after the first month of that, sometimes more, I double, triple my work hours pretty comfortably, and I just get fully into it. And that is at the point where I'm now like, I can't play games. I don't really get a lot to do.
Okay, dice que después del primer mes, mes y medio,
I like to do it. So technically I could not, but I
tengo el doble de trabajo, así que no puedo jugar.
The game where like I want the game to be as best as it can be all the time, and so I am of course going to be, I like getting into it around that point. Plus also preparing the live stream is like, that takes like a full month. It's a lot of work preparing that.
I bet.
Like preparing all these teasers, and lately I've started running around the office instead of walking, so I'm saving a little bit of time. But it stresses people out a little bit because they think something's going on. So
empezó a correr en la oficina en lugar de caminar porque ahorra tiempo, pero dice que las personas se estresan porque piensan que algo está pasando.
I need to get here. I'll just jog there instead, and people are like, "Oh, something's happening. What's going on?" So yeah, I'm.
There's gotta be a running marquee mode now.
Oh, it's good. It's fine.
That's
there was a dancing one from Once Upon a Time. There's a few dancing ones out there, so a running one's not too bad.
That's funny. Awesome. We will let you go there. Thank you so much. This is way more time than I thought we would take as well. Thank you so much for doing this. We super appreciate it. I hope everybody in chat liked it, and thanks so much for lending us your precious time and talking about everything.
Yeah,
cheers. I hope people got a bit of insight into how stuff works and how I think. I want people to know how I think. I think that's important, and I want hopefully people see, even if they don't agree with me and what we're doing here, that at least see that I definitely give a shit. I give a shit more than probably everyone. I have I've put, nearing
Nice.
like many tens of thousands of hours into this game, playing and working. I might even be over 100,000 hours at this point.
Dice, tengo más de 10.000 horas en el juego fácilmente trabajando y jugando. Tal vez tengas cerca de 100.000.
People are seeing a lot more of what they deserve to see, as opposed to just like,
¿Qué es este mod?
here's a
Polar
league
bear.
and here's a random other side feature, and it's a lot more responsive. But yeah, that's my hope. That's my goal. I'll try my best.
Right.
So, but yeah, and hopefully 324 is awesome. If it's not, tell me, and I'm sorry, but
4.000.
it's looking pretty awesome. I'm excited for it 100%.
11 años.
So yeah, just make sure.
11 años. Tal vez cerca de 100.000 puede ser, pero no
bingo
creo que es
boards of
100.000.
things you want to see fixed in it. If you're not, because that's what I like to see. It gives me clear, concise. Here's what I know is a problem, and I'll fix it. So if you have any issues, give me some bingo boards, and we'll go through them and see what we can do. It can be a 3x3 bingo as well. If there's not, hopefully there isn't always just 25 problems with the league. But
dice que preferiblemente sea un bingo de 3x3 porque le encanta el bingo porque son problemas particulares que puede tratar de resolver.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody enjoyed watching in Twitch chat and later on YouTube. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everyone. And yeah, cheers. Ziz. Have a good one.
Awesome.
That's pretty
Bye.
good, man.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Cheers. See ya.
Wow. What a podcast.
Huge.
Holy.
Huge.
Wow. Because like, it was really funny because this is very different from me than the podcast I'm used to.
Bueno, Dios, Zizaran. Anyways, con esto, mucha más información de lo que esperábamos tener en el podcast, sinceramente. Mucha más información. Y me gusta de que dentro de todo el podcast se sintió bastante, ¿cómo decirlo? Natural, en el sentido de que él es el que decide qué se hace y qué no se hace. Por lo tanto, él cuando te da una respuesta era como que, mira, o sea, si yo digo que esto lo vamos a hacer, lo vamos a hacer. Y that's pretty good. That's pretty good porque no se siente como una respuesta tipo... Y que, bueno, o sea, tomamos en cuenta tu feedback y lo vamos a tener en cuenta para las próximas reuniones. Y es como que, ok, no significa nada. Así que me gusta bastante este podcast. Me parece que hizo un buen trabajo Zizaran. Siento que, sinceramente, o sea, a mí me dio pena un poquito cuando mantuvo al final. Pero bueno, o sea, valió la pena. Y Mark también se nota que estaba feliz de hablar de eso, ¿no? Pero bueno. En resumen, un par de cositas que algunas personas están preguntando. Mark es el nuevo director técnico de GGG. O sea que, de GGG no, de Path of Exile 1. Por lo tanto, él es el que decide qué sucede y qué no sucede en Path of Exile 1. Mientras que Jonathan y Chris son los de Path of Exile 2 ahora. ¿Va a resumir la entrevista? No sé, puede ser. Voy a subirlo completo en YouTube, por supuesto, pero no sé si vaya a haber resumen de la entrevista. Voy a ver si saco tiempo y lo hago mañana, porque hoy tuve que haber hecho los Atlas y no los hice. Así que probablemente los haga mañana. Mañana hago los Atlas, hago el otro build. Voy a ver si prendo un poquito más temprano mañana, porque tenemos bastante que hacer mañana. Pero sí, nos ponemos con eso, ¿no? Ese es mi resumen ahora. Son demasiadas cosas. Demasiadas cosas. Básicamente, la mitad del podcast va a ser mi resumen lo más rápido que pueda. Mostraron un montón de escarabajos, un montón de cositas. Para los que se perdieron, miren, tienen unas imágenes acá que subieron en Imgur. Tienen los escarabajos. Este montón de cositas que mostraron. No mostraron ninguno... No mostraron ninguna de las cosas nuevas de los bosses ni nada por el estilo, aunque hablaron de eso. Dijeron que la nueva Catarina iba a trabajar con los bosses de Abyss, lo que significa que cuando peleemos con Catarina vamos a pelear con los 3 bosses de Abyss. Los mapas tier 17 van a ser afectados por el Atlas, por los escarabajos. Los escarabajos son brutales. ¿Qué otra cosa interesante? Los Uber Bosses, por lo que habían dicho, habían cambiado mecánicamente algunas cosas. Pretenden hacer como algunos cambios también al Gauntlet, si es posible. Y esos cambios en el Gauntlet pueden traducirse a algo para el juego. Estuvo hablando de todas las cosas de calidad de vida que han estado pidiendo, muchas de ellas he estado de acuerdo, algunas en desacuerdo, como siempre, pero en general parece muy, 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 muy positivo para el juego, sobre todo para lo que viene para 3.25. También descubrimos algo nuevo de que darle feedback en forma de hojas de bingo es algo muy bueno, así que hay que preparar los bingos para la próxima temporada y darle feedback de esa manera. Dice que es algo que si es, ¿sabes?, particular, puede leerlo y simplemente decir, ok, ya entiendo que es esto, lo puedo tratar de solucionar. O también decir, sabes, esto es demasiado, no lo vamos a agregar nunca en Path of Exile. Pero fue mucho de discusiones o de mucho insight de cómo él piensa, de cosas está dispuesto a hacer, cosas no está dispuesto a hacer, de puntos específicos. En general yo creo que fue muy positiva y tendría que pensar muy bien de qué cosas hacer resumen, pero en general las cosas que mostraron de la liga, los nuevos crafts de la liga, el cementerio son casi 100 espacios que puedes tener en el cementerio, puedes guardar hasta 60 cuerpos aproximadamente. Los crafts que se pueden hacer en el cementerio se ven muy, muy, muy OP. Y bueno, de resto, las cosas de Quality of Life y de filosofía que estaban haciendo está muy, muy bueno. Este podcast estuvo muy valioso. Si sabes inglés vale la pena. Si no, voy a resubir esto en YouTube y espero de que la traducción sea lo más apropiada que pudo haber hecho para ayudar a entender los que no entienden inglés. Pero bueno, gente, creo que también se va a retirar hoy, pues ya es un poquito tarde y Saraí me va a Crocs Alerta. Así que, bueno, me retiro por hoy. Mañana voy a prender más temprano. Ya sabes, tenemos que ver Atlas, el otro build y podemos empezar a traer al Croxi Policía a ver cositas, ¿no? Pero bueno, ahí tienen. Gente, nos vemos mañana en la próxima. Espero que hayan disfrutado del stream. Estuvo muy bueno. Voy a subir esto a YouTube, por supuesto. Y nos vemos en la próxima. Bye, bye.